RotoGrinders, welcome to, what is the name of this show? Do we have an official name of this show? It's the flagship show, far as I know. We're here for the next
Turk
2.5
Ferguson
hours.
and Friend show.
Yeah, so
well, I should say friend because I only like Andre.
Well, fair enough. Let's not name names. It's making it awkward. What's up, y'all? Welcome to RotoGrinders, RotoGrinders.com. Week 5 NFL DFS. We're here for the next 2.5 hours. Not us, but collectively as a RotoGrinders team. We're here for the next 2.5 hours. First hour, we're here for the first hour or so till 11:30, 11:20ish. Then we kind of cross over. Beer Maker Span gives us video, and then we turn it over to the tournament guys. They give you the Galaxy brain takes as far as how you dive into this slate from a tournament perspective. They'll tell you what's going on as far as actives and inactives. That is super important as well too, because we have our eyes on that. We'll talk about that throughout the slate. But this is just kind of like the table setter. This is the table setter show, because we're going to be talking about position by position, whatever you guys want to talk about in chat as well. Do like, do subscribe, do turn on notifications, fire off your questions in chat. Devin, producer extraordinaire, will be compiling those questions, throwing those questions my way, and then I'll be asking these two fine tournament players. Grant Neiffer, you heard him in the background. I don't have to ask Grant how he's doing because he texted me at 5 o'clock in the morning today. I am feeling fabulous.
Okay. Yeah, I did. I also texted you late last, well, not even late last night, like 9 o'clock last night.
Yeah, a visual of you not feeling fabulous. We can just say that, I suppose, right?
I mean, I had to get it out of me, and I had to get something in me. I feel fantastic today.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah. Well, you know what? We're ready to tackle the slates. It's already trolling us. But
you don't want to talk about my day drinking?
Well, we could talk about your day drinking on Monday night. When we do the show on Monday night, we're here for 3.5 hours Monday night watching the NFL game, the Monday Night Football game, and we can definitely dive into that. That'll be a fun conversation for sure. That's Grant Neiffer, tournament extraordinaire player. He's hitting all the props. He's hitting all the. He gambles on Monday night. That's what we do as well too. We'll talk about that. Yeah, join us there. It's good times
to gamble this Monday night.
Do you got any picks for the people? I might as well just fire off the promo code now. BetMGM. We have the promo code for them. If you guys have yet to sign up, use the promo code GRINDERSBET. 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 Bet $10, get $200 instantly when your team scores a touchdown. Grant, who's scoring a touchdown today? Who's going to win a bet?
I mean, if you want a team to score a touchdown, I'd probably say the Bills or Chiefs. Although I assume that most of them will. Just don't take the Texans. For bets, I'm checking to see what lines have moved. Because I had a lot earlier on in the week.
Yeah.
So I don't know if they.
Well, I'll give you a second to look, and let's introduce Andre.
Aaron Jones under 3.5 receptions. Humphreys over 20.5 yards. That line's moving up. Samuel's health is a little bit in question. I had Pitts over 4.5 receptions. That's already hit this morning, but that's over with.
Hit in the first quarter, I think. He had a touchdown in the first. Of course, he's not in the main slate, so he's scoring touchdowns. He's catching balls. He's crushing it in London. London thinks he's the greatest tight end ever.
Yeah, that's true. Kelsey under 7.5 receptions. There's another one.
All right. Andre, what's going on? How are things in your world? We're ready to tackle this slate. It's a 12 gamer, not a normal 13 gamer. Of course, we referenced the game going on in London, kicked off at 9 o'clock in the morning, East Coast time, 9:30, give or take, whatever it may be. Yeah, it's a weird slate because we lost a lot of good teams. No Seattle. No Rams. They play on Thursday night. There's no Bills. They play tonight. They play against the Chiefs. We have our eyes on some potential injuries that are lurking out there. Dalvin Cook, currently questionable. Who knows? That could be a big one. That could be a slate breaker for sure. If he doesn't go, Madison obviously becomes a really, really strong play. Your general assessment, Andre, before we kind of dive in and break it down. Of course, we'll talk about it from quarterback and all the positions. Talk about some of our favorite stacks as well too. And then whatever you guys want to talk about in the chat, we'll do our best to answer all those questions. But Andre, what's your general assessment of this slate? Where, I guess Giants and Dallas is the most popular game, but even that game, like, it's not amazing. I think it's fine, but we'll talk about it. What are your thoughts?
I like this slate actually. Like, I dove like really deep into it and taking a whole lot of stance on this slate. So to me, this is a perfect tournament slate. I like the Giants Dallas game a lot too, but there's one game in particular and just two quarterbacks in particular I am going to be way over the field on, and I know the game is going to go the way I want it to go, and I hopefully just look forward to coming in first place and taking everything down.
Grant,
I'm excited
Grant,
to hear what you have to say.
Grant, you want to guess what game that is? I have a guess. I'll throw a guess this way, but you go ahead and you take a guess. What do you think Andre's favorite game is?
Probably Carolina, Philly, or San Francisco, Arizona.
Nope.
No.
Neither one of them.
You took an extra guess and you still went over.
Well, I had 1 in 13 shot.
1 in 12. Did you not hear the introduction? The Jets are playing it, whatever. All right. So
he could be playing on a full Sunday slate. Dean, you don't know things.
No, we talk the main slate only on this show. That's what we're doing.
I don't pay attention to you. I talk about what I please.
Fair enough. I think it's the Packers and the Bengals. I nailed it.
That is actually that is my second high, actually my highest exposed QB in there. Yes, the bad man Joe Burrow on that end. I love him today. I think he's going to perform pretty well, especially going against Aaron Rodgers in Green Bay. And don't get me wrong, I have some Green Bay, Aaron Rodgers as well too.
Yeah, and the secondary for Green Bay, obviously Jair Alexander going on the IR. It's a beat up secondary for sure. Getting all three top receivers there for Cincinnati are back. Chase, Higgins.
Oh,
Boyd.
Breaking news. Gruden's emails include vulgar shot at Goodell. What a surprise.
But thank you for that dynamite drop in, Grant. That was very important. So I'm going to guess one more time. I'll take one more guess. Grant took 2 guesses. I'm taking 2 guesses. I think your favorite game is Tennessee versus Jacksonville. Speaking of coaches.
No.
Oh, you had 2 guesses and you went 0 for it. You couldn't even do that after I knocked 2 off the board, you idiot.
Let's see if the chat can guess it. Can the chat guess it? Because I'm struggling here.
Yeah,
I like that.
Tampa Bay is who he's going to be stacking.
Oh, that's a good one too. I like that.
Nah, I'll just talk about it. I'll talk about it real quick. It's my man Kirk Cousins.
Yeah.
I've been on him all week. So like before even the Dalvin Cook injury came out, that's what I love today. And one of those 2 quarterbacks are going to win $1 million and ship $1 million today.
One of those 2, like golf on the other side potentially?
No. I'm talking about one of the 2 as far as Burrow or Kirk Cousins is shipping $1 million.
Okay, I got you. Fair enough. Yeah, Alex and chat just nailed it too. Minnesota and Detroit. What are your thoughts, by the way? We don't know an hour and a half before, but we'll get the official word as far as Dalvin Cook. He said he wasn't 100%. Like, it's the Lions. You're a 10-point favorite. They don't really need Cook. Let him rest. I don't think he plays, but we'll see. Stay tuned. The worst, he might play and just chop it up just like last week where Cook gets half the snaps and Madison gets half the snaps and maybe it's all kind of worthless. Andre, what are your general thoughts? And of course, I love the Jefferson and Thielen as well too. Just that target tree is so thin on that Minnesota side. Basically, nobody else catches the ball. Osborne occasionally, Conklin every once in a while, but the Thielen and Jefferson feel really, really strong, especially if Detroit can somewhat keep up. Before we talk about quarterbacks and all that kind of stuff, what is your general thought as far as Cook? What are you expecting?
So I pretty much I think he's gonna play, but I think he's gonna be in a very limited capacity and limited role. I have on my season long team in a league with my friends. So I've been monitoring it all week just to gauge what he's gonna do. So I think if he came out and said he's genuinely hurt, especially with a high ankle sprain, that's something you don't really want to play around with. I think if he does play at all, like I said, it'll be very, very, very light. But I would load up probably Madison, which I'm thinking to probably have a couple shares of Madison and just get Dalvin Cook on my player pool total and take some shots on tournaments at him, because I don't think, like you said, Cook's not 100%. There's no reason for him to play him when you can just have the passing game in, and Madison can catch balls at the backfield too as well. So that's also a benefit to why I like Kirk Cousins a lot more.
Who are you running back on the Detroit side? Because Hawkinson's genuinely questionable. I assume he plays, but we'll see. Stay tuned on that one as well. But when you're playing Minnesota, the run backs are so unappealing in Detroit.
I like TJ Hawkinson. They say Schefter reported earlier this morning he's going to play. So I'm going to have some TJ, but I'm going to have probably a lot of DeAndre Swift running back with, which I like a lot because they're going to be playing from behind, catching the balls out the backfield. He still hasn't had a monster game yet. He's put up a pretty decent fantasy score. So I'm looking for this week for him to get in the end zone, hopefully a few times and have a big game, because he hasn't had like a 100-yard rushing game or 100-yard receiving game yet. So he has a chance to do that this week, I think.
Yeah, it's a weird thing with that, because traditionally, run backs on a team that's going to be down, you're looking at receivers, but the receivers are so rough. Of course, Hawkinson, basically a receiver playing as a tight end, more or less. But Swift ran, I think, 30-plus routes or so last week. So I guess you can do that. You can play Swift on the comeback, and I'm okay with that as well.
Stevens is not a bad option. Sorry, Stevens not a bad option as well, too. Sorry. But like I'm not going to have that much of him.
Devin dropping this in the chat. I actually missed this because I saw he was questionable as well. Devontae Parker officially ruled out, which I mean that feels like a game where Miami is going to pass the ball in theory like 40 or 45 times. Like Tampa Bay defense seems like an awesome play against Brissett too. But Waddle and Gesicki, somebody's got to catch that ball for Miami. And Tampa Bay, they're the pass funnel everybody knows about. You're not even supposed to even try to run the ball against them. Waddle and Gesicki, one of my favorite plays. If I'm not, finding the money for if I'm not finding the money for Waller, if I'm I want to have a little bit more funds for like instead of Ricky Seals-Jones or Evan Ingram and those kind of characters, I think Gesicki is a strong play. All right, before we dive in and break it down as far as position by position, do want to mention Yahoo. I just went and took a peek over there at their lobby, and let's see, the $1 Million Baller. It's got $150,000 overlay. $150,000 overlay. I have 149 entries, so not officially max enter it.
Why do you not max enter?
Because bankroll management, you can't.
No, but like, is it superstitious? You always throw 149 in there.
I like odd numbers.
You're a very strange person.
Different reasons. Fair enough. But there's like 9,000 spots still waiting to be claimed. If it does sell out, and I don't know if it's going to sell out. If it does sell out, they're giving out $150,000 in overlay.
Also, they just added another one. Yeah, 10K in overlay, 10 entry max, $10.
Where's that? Is that in the lobby? Oh, there it is right there. Oh, I got to take that. Yeah. The NFL Sunday 10K overlay, 10 entry max. So $75,000. What is it? The first place? It's probably like 7,500. Doesn't matter.
Well, I can check for you. It's 15,000. It's a little bit top heavy, but
okay. Yeah, but negative 15% as far as the management fee. And, I know this is like a promo for Yahoo, but like for real, like this is where you should be playing. You should be maxing this out if you have the funds to do so. This should be the first place you should be going. You can go ahead and play. Use the promo code Grinders25 for a free $25 bonus in your first deposit. They also have big contests this year for the single entries, for single games tonight for the Buffalo Kansas City game, Monday, Thursday, Sunday. We also have content for that too. Premium content, or we actually have live shows taking you guys straight up to lock all 3 of those days. The Yahoo Cup is still going on as well, $150,000 in prizes. All right. Again, do fire up your questions there in chat. Devin is compiling them. Whatever you guys want us to talk about, whatever we haven't focused on. If we missed somebody, we're going to, save the last 10 minutes of the show, give or take, and knock out as many questions as possible. All right, Andre, set this table here as far as quarterbacks. I know you kind of talked about Kirk Cousins already. Trey Lance is popping just because he's super, super cheap. I have some takes on that, which I'm concerned to some degree. Kind of makes stuff
you
work.
Concerned never.
Yeah, I am a little bit concerned as far as Trey Lance. It's George Kittle related, shocker of shockers, but he is super cheap and he kind of gets everything you want for you. What are your thoughts there, Andre? As far as I'm taking a peek as far as our ownership stuff, and it's pretty relatively flat. Trey Lance at 12%, Jones at 11%, Prescott 10.8. This is DK specific. If you have all the funds, Murray 8.4. Your thoughts as far as those guys? I think Lance is the interesting conversation to have, and he's also somebody that is kind of popping in cash games too, which again, that's one of my apprehensions as well. I don't know if I want to do that, but talk to me, Andre. Let's talk about Lance first, because I don't know what to do with him.
Yeah, if I'm advising, I mean, it's up to you guys and everyone else, but I advise everyone, bro, personally, me, I'm not playing Lance at all. I'm not on him. I understand that he has a rushing upside and what he can do with his legs, but without that, like, I think we have to be realistic. Without that, I know it's just one half of football, but without that broken play that he threw the ball for the touchdown to Deebo Samuels, I believe we wouldn't be, I don't think, having this conversation, because he would not have a good fantasy half that he had. Granted, Mike Shanahan's a great, I mean, well, his son is a great coach and can and obviously can game plan for him and do and put him in great positions to win and be successful, which I think he will. But I think he's not going to be able to, especially when he doesn't really have any weapons. All he has is Brandon Ayuk and Deebo Samuels, and and he's going to be without Kittle, who's out for the next 3 games. He's on IR, so that's a little bit concerning for me. So to me, I'm low on him because I know he has a rushing upside, and I'd rather take my chances by paying a couple $100 more and going up to like Daniel
You don't believe
Jones
in Ross Dwelly?
No, I don't believe in Ross Dwelly at all.
That's fair.
I don't. so I think, like I said, I'd rather just spend up a couple more $100 and take my chances on Daniel Jones and Joe Burrow, who I absolutely love, both of them this week.
Yeah, it's not that much more, like you said, $300 more. And the Kittle thing's a double whammy, because Kittle is an incredible receiver, but he's also an incredible blocker, and he's going to need both. And I think he's worth like real actual points in a game. Like I think he's worth, I don't know, like at least a point or something like that in Vegas.
And it's still a tough matchup too. Like the Cardinals defense is not a bad defense. They're a pretty good defense in my opinion. And he's a rookie quarterback, so they're going to throw different disguises, different looks at him that he's probably never seen before, which I think will be able to confuse him a little bit and make him throw a couple interceptions. So I definitely like taking a stance on not playing him at all and just seeing how he performs and just loading up on the Cardinals defense and see what happens.
I love that take too. I like the Cardinals defense in tournaments for sure, especially if Lance is going to get a good bit of ownership. No, for quarterbacks, maybe 10, 15%, whatever it may be. Grant, you have a thought there? Anything you want to expand on as far as the other quarterbacks we threw out? Dak's just been, he was super efficient last game, but they're going to keep crushing teams. Like, he doesn't need to do anything, and they're just going to keep handing the ball off, running the ball 35 times. They get, that dual prong running back situation there where they can kind of lean on, and they're projected to win pretty handily today against the Giants. That doesn't necessarily mean that's going to happen, but like, Dak's fine. Kyler is my favorite if I had all the funds in the world, but it's kind of tricky to make stuff work. Hurts has just been phenomenal every single start he has. I'm perfectly fine with Jalen Hurts. I don't think you have to pair him with somebody. Of course you can in tournaments. I'm fine with him. If I landed him in cash games, I probably won't, but I like his price on Yahoo. He's like 28 or 29 bucks over there. Grant, your thought as far as all these quarterbacks we're talking about?
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm fine with Trey Lance. I mean, he's going to be heavily owned, but play him. I'm not playing him probably over on DK. I'll probably play him over on other sites. Dak, probably a little bit too high owned for me. I'm probably going to stay away from that. Like you said, don't know how many times he's going to pass the ball. Like, the game script really doesn't favor them passing and running the ball a decent amount. I actually like playing Zeke more than I do playing the Dallas pass catchers outside of Schultz. Murray, he's expensive. It's tough to pay for. Brady, still going to draw some ownership. Game script really doesn't favor him. Miami, more of a bad run D than a bad pass D. I think the interesting ones are getting in at lower owned. Like Andre already mentioned, Cousins and Burrow. Love both those guys. I plan on using a ton of Thielen, a ton of Jefferson, probably a ton of Masson if Cook ends up getting ruled out. But like, Detroit's giving up deep balls. Like, it favors Jefferson perfectly. He's been very good so far this season. Cousins has been pretty solid. Like, the matchup is perfect, and it's a great way to pivot off of the chalk that will likely be Madison if Cook ends up missing. Burrow going up against Green Bay, going to be chucking the ball a lot. Has Mixon been confirmed out yet?
I think he's going to play, and it looks like we're going to get like maybe he's like 100% or that kind of thing, and they're probably going to. I don't know. He's not officially ruled in or ruled out, but it looks like he's going to play, and it's just mucking things up as far as Pirine, mucking things up as far as that, that backfield. And like you said, I think they're just going to pass the ball a good bit. And especially that Green Bay secondary all beat up, that kind of makes sense to me. 50 and a half total is a pretty big number. It is expected to play fairly slow the way these teams have played for what it's worth, but I like that game a good bit. And I agree with you as far as the Burrow side. Who's your favorite receiver to pair him with? I guess Chase is the home run hitter.
Yeah. It's Chase.
Yeah. Do you have a thought on that, Andre, as far as your favorite pairing with Burrow?
My favorite is going to be T. Higgins because he's coming back. I expect him to not be as high on. Chase has been getting a lot of the work. He, like you said, he's a home run hitter, but I think he honestly is going to be the best receiver out of all three of them. But I think right now T. Higgins is the guy for me.
Is there any other quarterback that you think is like worth a conversation? We can spend some time kind of run through all of them, but nobody else really excites me. Daniel Jones is perfectly fine. And he can run a little bit on the comeback there against Dallas, presumably. And he's got a pretty reasonable price. He's cheap on Yahoo. He's cheap on DK as well. Tom Brady, how much does Tom Brady have to do is kind of the question there. And they're probably going to score 30 points against Miami. How do those points get scored?
Yeah, I like Tom Brady. I think he's a good option today too as well. I feel like he's going to want to pass the ball a little bit more, even though I like Fournette too, but just to be a little bit different. I think having Tom Brady in there is a way to go, and pairing him with either, to me, AB or Godwin, I like personally. So it's going to be a low-owned combo. They're going to throw at least, I think Tom's going to throw at least 2 touchdowns today against Miami. Their secondary is horrible. So is their rushing, but rushing game too, a defense. But I still think he's worth having a couple roster shares of too. Sam Darnold I do like too, but I'm just not as heavy on him as well. Compared to all the other quarterbacks. Philadelphia secondary is not that great. Sam Darnold's been passed for like 300 yards for like 3 straight games or something like that, and can do it for the 4th straight game. And I like this matchup for him and for DJ Moore today. So he's someone I think is interesting too. And obviously, if you're going to have Joe Burrow, you got to have some shares of Aaron Rodgers and Davante Adams as a skinny. It's a skinny stat.
All right. Grant, I think the conversations get better for running back, for receiver. Obviously most of the quarterbacks you can play, you can make, don't even worry about ownership, especially when it comes after the top 2 or 3 guys or so, it gets dwindles down really quickly. Any other thoughts as far as quarterback, or do you want to have the Derrick Henry conversation?
Play Derrick Henry.
That is Derrick the conversation. So
Derrick Henry ball a lot.
Yeah, he's facing Jacksonville. Yeah, he runs fast. He's strong.
He's big and he fast.
So it's easier to play him. I like his price. It's weird again where he's a FanDuel type of player, but he fits more so on DK just as far as the build for me this week. He's more expensive on FanDuel. Yahoo, he's not impossible to get in, but you got to make some decision points as well. And something may happen as far as if Madison opens up, if Cook does sit, that's another like mid-range running back who looks really, really good. Maybe you want to delegate funds elsewhere. Probably more so a tournament thing, or also can kind of open stuff up where you can fit in Henry, depending on where you're shopping. I love him on DK. I like him on FanDuel. I like him on Yahoo. We know his history of smashing Jacksonville. It shouldn't be any different. Well, what is his number at, Grant? You're probably looking at it right now. As far as the team total, his rushing total was like 108, 109, 110.
116.
Jesus, that's ridiculous.
Too low.
You like the over?
Yeah, I do. Like Derrick Henry is going up against Jacksonville. I think let's see, how many times do you think he's beat this line against Jacksonville the last 2 seasons?
He's done it a lot. At least 3, I would say. Yeah. It's different circumstances sometimes, but it's still the Jaguars.
No, he only went 1 for 2 last year against Jacksonville. Although one he had 215 yards.
That seems like a lot. Andre, what do you do with
his touchdown prop is?
What are you doing with Henry, Andre?
I like Henry. I just don't know how much of him am I going to need. Like he obviously is cheaper on DraftKings compared to FanDuel, and we had this conversation last week where I felt the same way in a way because he at 9K. There's a couple of the running backs here that are in decent spots in the mid range that are going to probably go a little bit ignored and going to have a little bit low ownership that can get about 20 to 25 as well. I feel don't have that upside, so it's just a matter of playing. So I'm gonna probably be under on him, but I'm gonna be probably like if right now he's at like 24, 25%. I'm gonna have probably like 15% of him. I'm not gonna just go be over exhausted and go well over the field on him because I like some other running backs today too as well.
Who do you like?
I like getting a little bit of Kamara. We talked about DeAndre Swift, Leonard Fournette, obviously. I like Damian Harris too. Damian Williams is someone I also really like a lot, who I think who's now gain more momentum over for DK over the weekend. I see. And then I'm obviously Zeke Elliott at 9% ownership. To me, that's one of my favorite plays to stand out. At that price of 7K, he should be, I think, well more owned than that. I honestly, I think he should be like, as far as like ownership, close to Derrick Henry range. Najee Harris is also someone I really like a lot too as well. And I'm surprisingly, I think Josh Jacobs is someone that I think is going to go sneakily under owned and overlooked. So he's someone I think I like a lot because John Gruden, when he gets down to that red zone, he likes to give him the ball and punch it into the end zone. So I look forward to having some good amount of Josh Jacobs shares.
Yeah, man, the Harris one is weird because, he checks every single box as far as running backs you want with volume and opportunity, and he's going to goal line touches, and it's not this necessarily great matchup, and he's surrounded by a bad offensive line and a horrendous quarterback, and I don't want any pieces that are attached to Ben Roethlisberger, but also if he's catching 7 or 8 dump offs, especially on DK where you get the full point, you got to like yourself some Harris. Fournette as like chalk because he's going to be 15-20% owned, give or take, and probably depending on what happens with Madison and Cook. Like Fournette traditionally is just not a fun guy to roster when he's a chalk guy, especially on DK. Is he going to get those passes with Bernard being back today? How much does that factor in? Does he still get his 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 opportunities in the passing game? You mentioned Kamara. I get it. I think he's going to be reasonably low owned, but I don't love that matchup. I know Washington's been terribly disappointing as a defense so far this year. I trust the front 7 as opposed to the back 4, however you want to do that. Zeke is an incredible. I love Zeke as a what do they call that, Grant? Is that a leverage play? All the kids are playing the passing game there as far as Dallas, and that feels like a really strong leverage play. And we'll talk about that when it comes to like AJ Brown, the reverse of that. People are playing Henry. AJ Brown, in theory, I think he had a full practice on Friday. He should be good to go. So I love him for tournaments as well. All these names are thrown out here, Grant. Give me some takes. Give me some thoughts as far as the guys you thrown out there.
Yeah, sorry, I was busy making a Derrick Henry anytime touchdown bet over on the Fanduel at -185. I think there are a lot of options today at running back. I've obviously been tuning you out for the last several minutes because it's easy to do. I don't know if I'd play much Kamara. Like, I'm just worried about his touchdown equity. He's going to get 20 plus rushes. I think I bet the over on 20 rush attempts, but it's going to be a slow game. It's not going to be high scoring. Like, Taysom Hill can snake a touchdown away from him. It's about him. I don't think Robinson's worth the ownership. The guys I think are worth the ownership are Fournette and Barkley and Swift. They're going to be fairly high owned guys. Fournette going up against Miami. I think they're going to run the ball a lot. Miami much worse versus the run. Barkley is just going to get it done one way or another. He's going to get a whole bunch of targets. He's pretty much matchup proof or game script proof. So he's solid. And then Swift, I like as a bring back when I'm playing Jefferson or Thielen or Madison, but specifically he's good in both the passing and running game, although Williams might get a little bit more work if the game is a little bit out of hand. The interesting guys are, Zeke is probably my favorite play on the board today.
And he's also technically questionable, which I'm not afraid of that. I think he's fine, but like maybe that'll suppress his ownership to some degree. You won't know officially until 245. But like that, you're not scared of that, I assume. Obviously, you're not scared of that.
I'm not really scared at all. Like, Zeke is going to probably touch the ball 20 times in this game. He's probably getting a touchdown. I actually don't hate the Zeke anytime touchdown prop. I think it's over at, where is it? It's at DraftKings. It's -145. It's better than you're going to find anywhere else at the moment. But yeah, like he's going to crush here. I think Damian Harris is pretty interesting going up against Houston. Snap share wasn't great last week, but the game was kind of like geared towards him not rushing the ball a ton because guess what? Tampa Bay is very, very, very good against the run. So I really don't mind him. I think Aaron Jones is a great.
Are you concerned he's missing 4 of his 5 offensive linemen? Does that concern you?
It's Houston. Like, they're missing a team, like
an
entire team of players. They have Braden Cooks.
Yeah, is he playing linebacker today? But you mentioned the Fournette thing. How afraid are you, if not at all? It sounds like you don't really care that Bernard is back. Bernard traditionally is like a third down guy.
I don't live in fear.
Yeah. Just
you mean Bernard, the guy that's going to take the passing down work, the passing down that they're not going to be in very often?
Well, I mean, it's something. It's worth acknowledging the existence of happening, I suppose. Do you have a take as far as Harris?
I think I just said I like.
Yeah,
real Najee.
Real quick on the Fournette thing. Fournette is still getting targets. I'm looking at his games log right now. 5, 3, 4, 7, and those games before then were with Gio Bernard being active. So I wouldn't worry about the targets. He's still going to get the work regardless. It's just more so about is he going to perform at the salary and get to value.
I'm scared about Hubbard not getting any targets. I don't think he did even play third down once. Are we just crossing him out? Are we excited at all about Hubbard? Or it's just
I don't hate it.
I just don't like I want like running backs to be able to catch the ball. This is my problem.
I don't like Hubbard today because I think the Eagles have a good front seven in my opinion. So I'm typically not going to play most running backs unless you're like an elite running back against them. So I'm out on trouble today. I also do like one other guy who I think we have not mentioned at all, who is questionable, who is going to play today. And that's Chase Edmonds going against San Francisco. He's getting easily he's getting at least 10 rushes and getting targeted at least 4 to 5 times per game. So he easily can get the value and go beyond that because he hasn't got a touchdown yet, and he's still giving you double-digit fantasy points. So if he gets a touchdown, he could easily be in for a smash that.
Andre, let's just hypothetically say that Cook is ruled out. Madison or Fournette, straight up. They're basically the same price.
Yeah, I'm going to have to say Madison.
I think so, too.
I'm also going with that, but you can play both of them, Daniel.
Yeah, I know. I understand you can play.
You do realize that on Fanduels and Draftkings, you have 2 running back slots and a flex where you can play a running back.
Yeah, I understand, but I want to play other guys too. I want to play Elliott. I want to play Henry. There's other guys I want to play in the mix. That's all.
Just play 3 out of the 4 of them in every lineup.
Well, there
you go, Daniel.
Well, you're saying I should just have a 4 running back player pool is what you're suggesting?
Yeah, you can. I've done it before.
Well, yeah, you can, but my player pool is a little bit wider than that this slate.
Take a stand, Daniel.
I like both. You didn't take a stand. You said play both. Where is your stand?
My 4 running back player.
Okay, fair enough. Chat, fire up some questions. We're going to be answering those questions in about 10 minutes or so before we step aside and make way for the GPP conversation that Ben and Erik are going to have. They're going to dig much deeper. They're going to give you guys some just talk about the slate differently and what if the things that are supposed to happen don't actually happen. It's a worthwhile conversation to have for sure. Of course, they're going to tell you the actives and inactives as well. I see people asking questions in chat. If you're going to ask, please give specifics. Let us know. Is it for Yahoo? Is it for Fanduel? Is it for Draftkings? Is it cash? Is it tournaments? The details do help. Devin is compiling them. He's throwing them my way soon enough. All right, let's talk about receivers. And Andre, receivers, it's a weird slate where I don't really love anything outside of Adams. Adams is a really, really strong player. There's a lot of good plays. Nothing I'm thrilled about. On Yahoo, DJ Moore at $20 is egregious. It's an awesome play. Also, Saquon Barkley at $23. It's an incredible price as well, too. He's awesome over there on Yahoo. How much are you prioritizing Adams? And you talked about running it back with Cincinnati. Is that one of your favorite plays today?
Yeah, definitely. He's going to be probably definitely top 5 receiver, probably my number 1 receiver I'm going to have on the board today. I like getting some more, and he has and that's another thing why I also why I'm not as heavy on Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry's 9K versus Adams being at 8.2K. We know Aaron Rodgers is going to pepper him with targets, and he has just as much upside, if not a little bit more, in a passing game as Derrick Henry. So and he's cheaper. So I'd rather go that route and get and also get off the ownership a little bit and roll with Davante Adams.
Grant, your thoughts?
What are we talking about?
Are you still making bets, Grant? What are you doing? You can't keep up with the conversation.
I am looking at lines. I'm looking at line changes. So we obviously talked about Edmonds a little bit there. I'd like the over on his 68.5.
Yeah.
Rushing / receiving prop. I think that's good. It's interesting. Someone talked about Eli Mitchell there in chat, and is he a decent salary saver? I mean, I can never follow the carousel that is a Shanahan running back situation. So
I think he's the best running back in that team. I don't know how much value. I mean, if you're going to pick one, I think he's the guy over Sermon.
Yeah, I think he is too. But realistically, you're getting Chase Edmonds with a near identical rushing / receiving prop. Edmonds probably going to get more receptions. So I don't really know if I'd end up going with Mitchell. You can. Obviously, you look good that 1 week, He played, I guess, 1.5. He was in for most of the Philly game. But like, I don't know, it's just so tough to trust anyone because it's not like he's not going to use both. Like he'll use both Mitchell and he'll use Sermon. We saw him do this with Jeff Wilson and Mostert and Coleman and Juszczyk. And
so why do you need any of them?
Yeah, you don't need to do any. Like, yes, you can luck box into the right one on any given week, but it's not worth doing.
Adams is projected like for 4.5 more points, give or take, than the next highest receiver. Adams a really, really strong play, great cash game foundation play. Grant, let's kind of move on. DJ Moore, he's fully priced up on DK and on FanDuel. Like I said, Yahoo.
He's not fully priced up.
Well, he's been bumped up. I should say it's worth noting. Is he your second favorite receiver? You like him more than a guy like Jefferson?
Jefferson and Moore are my two favorite receivers, probably followed by McLaurin for tournaments at low 6% ownership. Like honestly, Thielen, Jefferson, Madison, like I'm going to use them all over the place. I'm going to use probably only one in every single lineup because like Jefferson and Thielen and Madison all eat into each other drastically. Like there's a reason why one of them generally goes off for a big game and the other two just go off for solid games. So if you're trying to get first, you basically want one of those three in there because there's very few scenarios where one of them doesn't go off for a big game. And that only scenario would be like Cousins running it in 2 touchdowns or Conklin getting a touchdown. So one of those guys is going to end up getting it done with a 30 implied team total. And I cannot believe how low the ownership is on Thielen and Jefferson.
Yep.
Yeah, it is pretty low for sure. And like Detroit's got to keep that game close, I think.
Ray, are you double stacking any lineup?
Yeah,
any Cousins lineup?
Yeah, I am definitely. I was just going to actually mention that. I like double stacking them a little bit because I think they can still go off and still have like 2 touchdown games each of them. But one thing I would say is in your lineup, separate Conklin from KJ Osborne. Don't have them both in the same lineup because either one of those two are going to go off. Not both of them in the same lineup, in my opinion. So I think it's either going to be Thielen and Jefferson together, or Thielen and Conklin, or Jefferson and Conklin. Or you obviously KJ Osborne could have a big game with one of those two as well. But
yeah,
that's
I think the double stack, like you look at going back to last season, Thielen or Jefferson like really don't go off in the same game. I think the better move is to pair them with Conklin or Osborne. Either one is fine.
Dre, you like Cooper or why am I losing the Lamb? Which Dallas receiver you prefer?
I mean, I want to go with Amari because I think Amari he always seems to play big against the Giants. But with him being bothered with my hamstring and then his ribs as well, you're going to have to go with CeeDee Lamb, I think, in this matchup a little bit more, even though I like both of them just as much. And I think CeeDee Lamb he didn't get targeted a lot last game. I mean, he got targeted a decent amount last game, but Dalton Schultz got all the work, and everyone thinks going to try to be on Dalton Schultz a lot. So I would just use that leverage and go to Lamb a little bit more. Even though he's getting Lamb is getting higher owned than Schultz, or his price is ridiculous. That's why. Well, yeah, than Cooper. So yeah, it makes sense.
Grant, your favorite Tampa Bay receiver?
Probably Godwin, but just throw a dart at any of them.
Give me AB as my favorite.
Yeah, I like him too, and I think he's cheaper than the rest as well. And I know he's not on the field every single snap, but like he's just so good when he's out there. 5.2K, pretty good price on DK. I think he's 19 on Yahoo. Do we care about the Pittsburgh receivers? Claypool is back, but again, I mean, there's Juju, there's Johnson, there's Harris. I just don't want to attach myself to Ben. Like you can, and it's 39 team total in this game.
I mean, in full point PPR, like Ben might throw the ball 50 times.
Really?
Yeah, he could, but I just see. I like Deontay. I like Deontay. That's the only receiver I really like a lot in the Pittsburgh matchup.
Why don't you think Ben will throw the ball 50 times?
Yeah, I mean, he might break if he throws the ball 50 times.
He did it against Cincinnati.
Well, whatever, man.
He's averaging over 40 a week.
Get the duct tape ready just in case. So the Giants receivers are cheap. They're without 2 of their top receivers. So now Galladay and Tony, they're the rookie. Got a fair bit of targets. He's popping in DK cash games because he's 4K, and we live north of a salary cap. We'll talk about Evan Ingram as well too. Soon enough that the tight end's 3.2K, pretty cheap. I don't know what to do with these guys. Andre, Galladay, Tony, are we excited? We'll talk about Ingram in a second. We talk about tight ends. These guys excite you? Are you going to be more than the field, less than the field? You taking a stand on it or what?
I am going to be more than the field on them. Because like I said, I think quarterback wise, Daniel Jones is my third favorite quarterback on the slate, followed by Dak Prescott. So to my opinion, I think that Daniel Jones is going to be playing a little bit down. So I like the game script of having him throw the ball more and running the ball more. So I like pairing him with either Saquon and one of the receivers. But I think Tony being at a cheap price has opportunity to get open and do some damage. And Kenny Galladay's got covered with a lot of targets last week. And I think while they're while Shepard and Slayton are out, he's gonna have to take advantage of these targets and do as much damage as he can, and hopefully Daniel Jones will be able to go to him more so throughout the season. So I definitely like both of the receivers for sure. I think that like, not saying that Dallas doesn't have a good defense. I think they do. They just cut their middle linebacker who was a really good player. I don't understand what happened, but their secondary is still. I think their secondary is it's good, but I think it's still questionable, and this has not really been challenged yet, a lot. So I think that like those 5 picks, some of them were fluky, some of them weren't, but I think that we can still attack this defense, especially in the middle of the field, and see what can happen.
Grant, you have a good take on Curtis Samuel. He's 3K on DK. He just came back last week. 37% of the snaps he had. No De'Ami Brown, no Logan Thomas. That's Ricky Seals-Jones. Talk about him in a second. He just kind of makes stuff work, and I'm concerned like he's not fully healthy. I don't know if he runs 100% of the snaps. I feel great about it at 3K, still minimum. What do I do with Curtis Samuel? You know, again, I'm only interested in super
play
cheap.
Hump Dog?
I mean, maybe. I'm not thrilled about Hump Dog either. Yeah. What is his receiving prop? 22 yards? What was the number?
20 yards. Yeah.
Oh, I mean, how can I get excited over that?
You can't, and you don't. Like in that scenario, you're hoping for a touchdown and like 8 receptions to 25 yards.
Yeah, and that game environment seems kind of rough as well too. New Orleans on the other side. It just doesn't feel like a fun game to get attached to. But
what do you think about Mooney?
I like him.
I like him on he's $12 I think on Yahoo. That's where I think he's interesting. Give your thought there, Andre.
Yeah, just Justin Fields seems comfortable with him, and I think that and who they going? Chicago's going against.
They're in a dome against the Raiders.
They're going against the Raiders. Raiders has a pretty good defense, but I think that Mooney's going to see the lesser of the weaker corner in that matchup. So I like Mooney to get open a lot, especially across the middle of the field. So, which seems to be the weakest point for when I was looking at some of the game film I was watching earlier in the week. So Mooney to me that's a great rapport with Fields as well. So I like targeting him a lot. It seems like he just goes from often and early throughout the game.
We got to move on and talk about some tight ends. Grant, your thoughts as far as tight end? No Kelsey in the main slate. What?
Schultz.
That's a donkey play. You're chasing that one, I think. I'm on in that Schultz. He's been getting lucky and super efficient. I mean, you could have a pinch of it.
He's had 6+ targets 3 out of 4 weeks. He's 4.4K. He's coming in at less than 7% ownership. He's leverage off of CeeDee Lamb and Amari Cooper high ownership. How am I a donkey?
Because Gesicki's better and Fant is better. Ingram is cheaper and probably just as good. And I'm
not good. And Ingram is way higher.
I don't like
Ingram has
either.
3 times the ownership. People
Why
are
is that
playing
the one
Ricky
thing you attach
Seals-Jones,
to?
who's hot garbage.
Attack me for my Gesicki take. I like Gesicki and Fant more. And I don't know. Denver is just super, super thin as far as options. We don't really know isn't Sutton currently questionable as well too. They are thin as far as past receivers in that team. They've lost guys throughout the season. Judy as well. Jump in here, Andre. What's your take on these tight ends we're talking about?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I like Noah Fant a lot, just because we got Teddy B back in the lineup, so I think that's going to be really beneficial and helpful a lot. He's going to pretty much, I think, target him inside if Sutton plays, but if Sutton is out, Fant's going to have pretty much a lot more targets. I expect Fant to see at least 10 targets today if that happens. Gesicki's it's in a good position just because of the matchup against Tampa Bay. So I don't mind that play at all. But I really am going to try to spend up if I can and get to Waller. He's going to be supposedly going to be 11% home, but normally we typically find that, especially on DK, tight ends coming at that price coming lesser owned. So I'm gonna probably be over the field on Waller, if not at the field for sure. I'm definitely gonna be under the field on Evan Ingram. And I also like Tyler Conklin a lot too today as well.
I think that number is accurate, by the way. I don't think Waller is going to be much higher. This is DK specific. And like he's going to be more heavily owned on Yahoo. It's just easier to make it work. More heavily owned on Fanduel. But I think that number is probably between like 10 and 13. So if you like him, yeah. And like you said, there's no Kelsey on this slate. Kittle's hurt. Hawkinson, who knows if he's going to be hobbled out there. Waller is like, as far as projections, if you trust projections, he's projected to score 5 points more than the next guy. Who's the next guy? Gesicki. I like Gesicki a good bit. Grant, you got anything else to add as far as tight ends? We do have to move on and knock out all these questions from chat. Devin has been kind enough to compile them.
Questions.
What? Oh,
let's knock out them questions.
All right. Grant, I'm going to go to you first. Then Andre, we're going to kind of bounce back and forth. Maybe you can squeeze in a few more if you guys haven't asked. Grant, if you're fading Henry, what are your thoughts on pivots? Well, it's not direct pivots necessarily, is it? It's just a different lineup build, I think.
I mean, if you're is he talking about like playing AJ Brown, Tannehill as leverage? Yeah, I think that's not a terrible play.
Or running back pivots. I'm not really sure exactly what the question they're asking.
No, well, I mean, no one's really as high priced as Derrick Henry. So, I guess the pivot is Saquon at 7.3K, drastically lower. Like, I don't think I'm using Kamara. Like, you're just doing a different lineup build.
Robert's got a question for you, Andre. FanDuel GPP Chase versus Evans. I assume that's Jamar Chase versus Mike Evans. Who do you prefer?
I'm going to go Jamar Chase.
Ravens fan just said Andre is like the therapist between these two newlyweds. Yeah, well, Grant's spoken for, and he's already, Grant, I appropriately step back. We do tend to fight a lot for whatever reason. Question for you. Yeah. Grant, I got a question for you. DK tournaments, this is from Jason. GPP on DK, Godwin, Galladay, or Lamb? I mean, it's probably based upon your lineup construction. Would you have a preference amongst those three?
Yeah, I mean, go for correlation, but my preference is Galladay.
Let's see. Andre, it looks like, this is according to Brian, it looks like Eli Mitchell will play. Do you like him for cheap? We kind of had the conversation with Grant. I don't know how much you chimed in on that one, Andre. Eli Mitchell.
Play. I honestly do not play any San Francisco running back because the situation is always confusing and rough. So I stay away from it personally.
And Juszczyk's going to get a 1 yard touchdown, or Lance is going to get a 1 yard touchdown, like something like that. I think that's going to happen too. Yahoo cash question. These are all good cash plays, actually. I'm not sure if you're playing cash over there, Grant, but Henry, Jacoby Myers. Jacoby Myers is like $13, $3 above the floor. Is he going to catch his touchdown finally? I don't think he's caught an NFL touchdown just yet. So, Grant, it's a cash question on Yahoo. Henry and Myers versus Najee Harris and Davante Adams. All four are good plays today.
Henry Myers probably, but you play cash on I would probably more trust you, which is weird to say.
Yeah, Harris is $21 and Adams is like $29, which is a really good price. It's probably like the better. I bet the math says it's Adams and Najee. That's the thing over there. Like I made a cash lineup before the show, and I usually make more than one iteration, and I'm probably gonna have one with Henry and one without. Like that's just, and this is one of the. But I think Adams is just a better play, dollar for dollar. And I talked about Barkley being really cheap, and some of this probably be spoken for as far as what happens with Minnesota. If we see Cook sit, we have a $20, I believe, is Madison, and Fournette's $18.
When are we gonna get that gosh darn news?
Well, an hour and a half before, not 90 minutes before, so at 11:30 East Coast, we'll know officially what's going on there with Minnesota, and he's gonna dress, and it'll be like, who knows?
Yeah,
it's gonna be those murky things.
I would say just don't play him. Like to me, I took my player pool. I just put straight in a little bit of Madison and just gonna live and die with that. I don't think it's worth taking a shot on. And plus, I like the passing game anyway more so than anything in that game, which I think is going to be underowned. So I'd rather go that route anyway. Just to be.
My thing is like, what's the chance that one of Thielen, Madison, or Jefferson don't end up with 30 points going up against Detroit?
It's an interesting idea. Oh, go ahead, Andre.
No, I think it's slim to none. Like one of them is going to do it. One of them definitely is. I'm gonna have probably like like 2 to maybe 5% of Madison the most, because I just don't know how it's going to shake out. They might still play Cook because they played Cook last week and then he just came out the game because his ankle was so bothered. So it could be one of those situations too. I'd rather just take the chance and play the passing game a lot more, which I love anyway.
All right, we got some questions we got to run through. I do see in chat the link to the DFS OGs FanDuel contest week 5. Hit that up. There's about 30 spots left. You guys can take down Beer Makers Fan, Head Chopper, Noto. I'm in there as well. There's $10,000 in added value to that contest. Your top 10 scores for the season, so it's not too late to jump in there. You get in a whole. They keep a scoreboard. It's good times. Lots of fun to play. I think I'm like 40ish or so right now. Let's knock out some questions. FanDuel single entry: Saquon and Thielen versus Najee and Jefferson. All guys we like. Who do you like there, Grant? Saquon and Thielen versus Najee and Jefferson.
And Thielen probably.
Andre, thoughts on Ty Austin? Do you have thoughts on Ty Austin? Positive ones?
Ty Austin.
Do we have thoughts on?
Who is Ty Austin? Oh,
is that Tavon Austin? Is that Tavon Austin?
Wait, that's the thing. If you're talking about Tavon Austin, then no, I understand he's running more routes, and in for a lot of the plays, but no, he's not an option for me.
Thoughts on KJ Osborne and Minnesota stacks, Grant?
Yeah, and like you definitely have a double stack if you're doing that.
FanDuel cash thoughts. I'll answer this on Murray and Nuke and stack. No, you don't have to stack in cash, and Nuke is too expensive, and Murray's even hard to get to. No, like you can play Murray in cash, but you're not playing Nuke in cash. You're playing Adams over, and before that, you're delegating funds elsewhere. Love him for tournaments as always, but yeah. Andre, DK tournaments. Which Minnesota receiver you prefer? You got to pick one. Who's your favorite?
Justin Jefferson.
Agreed.
Grant, Yahoo tournaments: Tim Patrick or Antonio Brown?
Antonio Brown.
Andre, FanDuel tournaments. You like a stack Madison with Cousins and Jefferson, or no? That seems a bit much, right? That's an onslaught.
I mean, you could stack it with either one of them. No, I would do one receiver and one running back, but you could definitely do it because he received some passing. He was to work out of the passing game a little bit with Madison.
And you want to make sure you get positive news for Madison as well, too. Like if Cook is playing, and I mean, who knows? It's going to be trying to figure out the wording. Yeah,
I think true. But like I said, I think Madison's going to play regardless. Even I just looked at obviously our projections updated. I see the Blitz update a little bit with the projections on Madison and with the Cook, and even ESPN did too a little bit. They brought down Cook's his projection. So I think Cook is not going to play that much. I think it's going to be a lot of. I think what's going to happen is they're probably going to try to get up early. And then they're going to try to, with a couple passing touchdowns, and then just give the ball to Madison for the rest of the game and see how that goes.
I see Jason and Chad play Chubb and Hunt together. I would say no. Chad wants to know DK Cash, Gesicki and Tony versus Ingram and T. Higgins. That is a question I am deliberating. That is very tough. And you're on the right track. It's a 51-49 kind of coin toss. Grant, give me your favorite stack of the game. Stack today.
Probably any Giants.
And Andre?
I have two. So I'm going to say definitely the Vikings when it comes to Kirk Cousins and Justin Jefferson is one of my favorites. And then I also like Joe Burrow with T. Higgins a lot today and running it back with Davante Adams.
Check out that Yahoo contest going on right now. $150,000 overlay. That's guaranteed no matter what. Might even be more if it doesn't completely sell out. Use the promo code Grinders25, free $25 bonus on your first deposit. Check out myself and Grant talking Monday nights. Later on tonight, we're not us, but somebody's talking Showdown, taking you guys all to lock on Showdown slates. That's Thursday night, that's Sunday night, that's Monday night. Good times for sure. And stay tuned after us. Well, right now, Beer Makers Fan's going to tell you his six-pack, his favorite picks of the week, as well as Erik Beimfohr and Ben. They take you guys all the way up the lock. That was Andre, that was Grant, that was Devin producing, that was football. Thanks for watching. Do like, do subscribe, stay tuned. More is coming. We're out of here. Oh,
hey, kids.
We're here back in the Fantasy Bar. 6 plays for you for week 5 on Yahoo, including a couple running backs under $20, a wide receiver quarterback pairing I'm eyeing this week, a tight end I think bounces back in a big way, and of course, my favorite play on Yahoo for the week. Who is it? Belly up to the Fantasy Barn. Find out. Welcome in, guys. Week 5 edition Beers Daily Fantasy 6-pack back in the fantasy bar once again with 6 guys fresh off the tap for you over on Yahoo. Thank you, as always, for stopping by and checking out the video. Now, before we get into the plays, as always, make sure you click that thumbs up button. I greatly appreciate it. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Get over to scoresandodds.com/beer for all of your sports betting needs. Tons of information over there. Compare odds across all different sports books and get premium picks from some of your favorite RotoGrinders personalities, myself included. Will have a pick for tonight's game and more for this weekend. If you want to check it out, scoresandodds.com/beer. And lastly, Yahoo doing big once again. The $1 million baller contest, free money in the prize pool. If you want a special offer on Yahoo, click the link below the video for $25 to utilize in your DFS contest on Yahoo this week. All right, let's dive into the plays here. For this week, we're going to start at the running back position with Damien Harris of the Patriots, just $19. Now, I know it's been a wild ride here with Damien Harris. Last couple games, not great. Against 2 pretty good run-Ds, though, in New Orleans and Tampa Bay. We cannot say the same here about the Houston Texans. So I really think New England is a team that wants to win on defense, and they want to run the ball. I don't think they want to put a ton on Mac Jones' plate here. So I think we get a big dose of Damien Harris in this game. The Texans have allowed the 6th most rushing yards and bottom 10 in touchdowns allowed as well. I like also that it's not a full PPR over here. We know Harris, not a big time pass catcher, so it puts more relevance on the yards, on the touchdowns here. And I think he'll be able to rack up plenty in both categories here. New England, big time favorites in this one. Game script is definitely in our favor here. Don't be afraid to go back to the well on Damien Harris. All right, let's go to the quarterback position next. We're going to roll with a mid-range option with Daniel Jones of the Giants. Now, Danny Dimes, we've had him before. He's been good to us. He's definitely had his ups and downs, but that's what you get with a guy like this. But 2 road games so far, and I know, very limited sample. Don't need the sample size police after me here. This guy's averaging almost 29 Yahoo points a game on the road. Now, this game here, 52-point total, so we know there's going to be points scored here. Dallas playing extremely well and a big favorite. Likely playing from behind here are the Giants. We know he's going to be throwing a lot. We know he offers a ton of upside with his legs as well. And Dallas has not done well against the quarterback position. Bottom 6, in fact, in pretty much all the major categories. Passing yards allowed, touchdowns, rushing touchdowns allowed, which we know Jones has the upside for. And of course, fantasy points allowed to this position. Sets up very well this week for Daniel Jones. All right, we like Daniel Jones. Who do we pair him up with? For me, wide receiver Kenny Golladay, $18. So likely no Sterling Shepard, Darius Slayton once again. So we're going to be thin on the pass catchers. Love Saquon Barkley this week, but I also like the passing game here against the Cowboys. Again, Dallas has struggled with wide receivers, as you'd expect. 5th most receiving yards allowed to that position. Bottom 3 in fantasy points allowed. We really saw Golladay get it going last week, and I think he builds upon that here and has an even bigger game. So again, 52-point total in this one, and a lot of ways that you can run it back with Dallas. Zeke has looked great. You want to go the passing game here, pair it up with Zeke, makes a lot of sense. I think CeeDee Lamb's in a bounce back spot. Amari Cooper always solid at home. So many ways that you can build yourself a little game stack here with Jones and Golladay. I think it'll be very productive in this one, and the price is very cheap over here on Yahoo. All right, let's go back to the running back position. Once again, we're going to stay under $20, try to make life easy on you. We're rolling with Damian Williams of the Bears. Unless you've been living under a rock, you know by now, no David Montgomery, expecting to miss 4 to 6 weeks here. Damian Williams, I think, is a guy that's going to take over this backfield. I know there's some Khalil Herbert talk, a guy I'm intrigued with, but I think Williams going to get the majority of the work here for the Bears. Now, we know Justin Fields has been named the starting quarterback for the rest of the season. Things have not gone well through the air for Justin Fields. I love the big arm. I love the shots they're taking, but I think they're going to have a basic game plan until he gets comfortable here. And that's going to mean a lot of Damian Williams, whether it's running the ball or catching the ball out of the backfield, giving Fields those easy completions here. We know Damian Williams, a very good receiver out of the backfield, and Las Vegas, decent defense, no doubt. I think they're going to give Fields some fits, but they have allowed 6 touchdowns to running backs already. 7th most fantasy points allowed here. I think Damian Williams gets going here in a big way against the Las Vegas Raiders. All right, to the tight end position, a stud that's been disappointing so far. I think he breaks out in a big way this week. That's George Kittle, $21. So great buy low here on George Kittle. Anytime I can get a guy like this at $21, people are going to go with the recency bias here. He's been killing me in DFS. He's been killing me in my season long. He's injured. You're going to get some low ownership here on George Kittle. Now, certainly not going to be unowned, but I think it'll be a lot lower than he probably should be in this spot. So again, production hasn't been great, but look at the targets for this guy. 20 targets over the last 2 games. And I don't think it's going to change here with Trey Lance taking over the reins at quarterback. I'm expecting this offense to be electric with him. Yes, he's going to have his struggles as a rookie quarterback, but I really think he's going to lean on Debo, really think he's going to lean on George Kittle, and obviously he's going to run the ball. But Kittle in a good spot here. We know Arizona's going to score points. San Francisco needs to oblige, and I think Kittle going to be a big part of that here this week. Just $21, great value here on Yahoo. All right, it's time to take a look at my favorite play on Yahoo for week 5. But before we do that, we want to continue our Beast of the Week contest, absolutely free to play. This is a thank you to you guys for hanging out, checking out the video, the thumbs up, sharing the video. We appreciate all of it. So all you have to do, get in the comment section right below the video and guess fantasy points from my favorite play of the week. The closest guess is going to win themselves a free RotoGrinders t-shirt. Soft, comfortable shirt. I promise you, going to be one of the best shirts you own. Just get that guess in the comment section. While you're there, let me know your Beast of the Week. Who are you playing? Who are you paying up for this week? Who's your top play of the week? Let's talk about it in the comment section. All right, without further ado, let's wrap this baby up. My favorite play for week 5. You know I'm asked, the Beast of the Week. All right, Beast time. Back to the wide receiver position. We saved you a lot of money here, so we're going to spend up to DeAndre Hopkins, $29, this week's Beast of the Week. Now, very similar to Kittle, has had his ups and downs here, and it's not so much the offense struggling, it's so many options in this offense. We've seen big games out of Christian Kirk, Wandale Moore, AJ Green. Well, I think this is a week where DeAndre Hopkins is really going to get it going here, and a lot of people are going to shy away with those concerns. These are the situations I want to dive into and get some exposure to here. So love Hopkins in this spot. Cardinals offense has been awesome so far through 4 weeks. Another big total here, over 50, and air yards are certainly there. The production not there, but over 40% of the air yards last week. It's a good matchup here with a weak San Francisco secondary. I think they're very vulnerable here. To me, you add it all together, the minimal ownership here, the matchup says blow up spot here for DeAndre Hopkins. Take advantage. Easily my favorite play on Yahoo in this week's Beast of the Week. All right, guys, that wraps up for week 5 on Yahoo. Again, make sure you get your guess for DeAndre Hopkins fantasy points for your shot at a free RotoGrinders t-shirt. Make sure you take advantage of that offer right below the video. Click that link for $25 to utilize on Yahoo scoresandodds.com/beer for all of your sports betting needs. And again,
welcome to week 5 final GPP takes on rotogrinders.com. As always, I am your co-host, Erik Beimfohr, and you can find me on Twitter at Erik Beimfohr. I am also, as always, joined by Ben Gretch at YardsPerGretch on Twitter and the author of the best fantasy football newsletter in the business, Stealing Signals, which you can find at bengretch.substack.com. Is that right? bengretch.substack.com.
Yes, sir.
Make sure to go and subscribe for that. And this week is an ever important week for understanding some of the things that Ben likes to talk about every single week, because as we are going live, we're getting inactives and actives and finding out. I mean, the theme of the slate, let's just not even like try to sugarcoat it or bury the lead, is it's a pretty wide open slate, and we have a lot of really appealing teams, appealing players, a high upside offenses off the slate. And it appears we're going to get a huge decision point with Dalvin Cook looking like he's out. He is officially ruled out. Dalvin Cook is officially out for today, which gives us obviously Alexander Mattison in a spot against the Lions, which is a spot we really want to attack. So I do really feel like we should start there, and the running back collective as a whole. Ben, I'm sure you kind of been planning thinking about this already, but how does this Dalvin Cook news kind of impact how you're approaching running back, especially on this slate?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough because Madison is underpriced. We were talking a little before the show that it's kind of odd that he's sort of, lost some pricing relative to a couple weeks ago when like sort of before we knew that Cook was dealing with significant injuries and he was just already priced up in a sharp move by the sites. Madison was, in case something were to happen to Cook, and he was still pretty chalky and he smashed. And now it's another great spot, but he somehow, despite smashing in that spot, is now cheaper. He's going to be, massively chalky. Everyone's going to switch over to him. I kind of, it's hard sort of to get off of that. He's a really good points per dollar play. I'm more willing to eat the chalk at running back. There are some passing game, game stacks, quarterback, receivers that I like that are more contrarian. And so it's going to lean me those ways, I think, in the other parts of my lineup in tournaments, and probably going to play, a decent amount of Madison.
Yeah, that's how I feel. I think it does create a really interesting situation where, for me personally, as more of a smaller field, like I'm playing 3 tournament teams like total for today, so it's not like a ton of different permutations of things that I'm going to do, but from I think a lot of people play a little bit smaller amount of entries. There's not a ton of like 150 maxers out there, and my kind of general approach, how I've been thinking about it this morning, assuming Dalvin was out, is I still really, really like that Vikings passing game. And now it does create like crazy leverage on this slate. So for me personally, that's like the first big takeaway is I would not leave this slate without like and you can do it kind of however you want, but Cousins and some combination of 2 of his pass catchers, whether that's both Thielen and Jefferson, if you want to include KJ Osborne, if you want to include Tyler Conklin, however you want to approach that. I think now more even than this morning, I already liked that game in the Vikings passing game. Now it's a little tougher to stomach because you basically have to forego the best play. In theory, you could include Madison and like really like onslaught the Vikings, but I think the best approach is using that as a leverage point. Madison to me, however, still is like a borderline lock, like as much of a lock as you can get, from this 1 to 3 lineup type of play. He's very, very clearly the best points per dollar projection. We also saw like an insane passing game role the last time he was out there, which was like maybe part of the concern for any sort of fragility around him as a play. And so he would be then, I would like to leverage him on a team or 2, basically, with Cousins, Jefferson, Thielen. But I would also like to play him on the teams where I'm not leveraging him, because I think running back is actually fairly weak this week. And so it would be the same thing as your approach. I have some stacks and some game stacks that I think are pretty off the board. So I would feel comfortable just kind of like taking my best projection at running back with Madison.
Yeah,
is that kind of how you're approaching it?
Yeah. And the way that it's funny, you say running backs weak this week, I think, I'm a 0 RB bro, but I think it's interesting that running back is kind of weak this year. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like we're at a point where Alvin Kamara is not a guy we can trust. Cook's out here. Christian McCaffrey's out. You have, Derrick Henry, and you have, the Aaron Joneses of the world, and some of these players obviously that have huge ceilings that we're aware of. But there's also some teams that have been a little bit more pass heavy, I think, than they're sort of kind of going the Bills route, that are kind of hurting. I think the ceilings for, some running backs are looking decent. I've heard some stuff about like Josh Jacobs. I don't think I can play him in a situation where the Raiders have been so aggressive passing the ball on early downs that I just don't know that his ceiling is going to get there. We've seen that happen to the Cowboys. We saw a good ceiling game from Zeke last week. Still just not really interested in playing the Cowboys running backs. I think that's, certainly something that can pan out, but you're going to see a lot of weeks where they just don't have a big enough pie for their running backs. There's just a lot of offenses where the production in my mind right now, and where we're sort of headed from a fantasy perspective. The big one this week is Leonard Fournette was going to be really chalky. Now it's probably a lot of it's going to move to Madison, but the way Fournette fails is just the Bucs passing game is where they get all their, fantasy production. And so we have that in a few different spots. It's an important thing to consider. It's a big reason why I'm more likely to play Madison, basically. This is a team, the Vikings that we know runs their offense through their running backs. This is an old school offense. That's a good thing. I'm more likely to eat the chalk in the points per dollar chalk and all those things at running back when there's not a lot of good pivots at the top, the middle, anywhere at running back in a league that's all, across the board is starting to deprioritize the position even more than we've seen over the last, decade, which it's already been doing.
Yeah, I feel like, the zero RB brain, the fade running backs in the offseason brain is like coming to this perfect mind meld right now with like this week in particular. You get David Montgomery gone and Damian Williams. So like between Damian Williams and Alexander Madison, you have these, quote unquote zero backup running backs basically, right? That now get thrust into the role as you were outlining that like almost doesn't exist in the NFL anymore, right? Like we talked about, Zeke had a great game last week, ran for 125, 130 yards or whatever. He scored 23 fantasy points. It's like, So what? It's
really easy for receivers to beat that.
Yeah, easily. I mean, how many receivers? I mean, Tyreek was bordering on tripling that up last week. It is that I think, and we talked about this early in the season, that I think the way the league is going is trending away from that. So, however, to your point, when we get the rare situation, kind of like we have with Madison today, kind of like we have with Damian, it's not as perfect of a matchup or offensive situation for Damian, but in terms of a role, passing down role, early down role, goal line role, right? Those don't really exist. And they certainly don't exist for 5,500 or whatever those guys are on DraftKings. So I tend to agree that I'm a little bit more open to just kind of like, take the points at running back, right? You just don't get this very often. And I'm not sure we're going to get this very often throughout the season. The outlier to this is Derrick Henry. He would be, now on the flip side, you have a little more money to spend up, right? We haven't touched on, but Devontae Parker is out. There's some value across this slate. Obviously now with Madison, you can get to Derrick Henry at 9K against the Jaguars. He has been catching passes. How are you handling, kind of the fact that we can afford Derrick Henry if we want, but he is, pricey, and that's a tricky thing to handle.
Pricey and super chalky. And, playing Henry and Madison together is, eating a lot of chalk. It's more chalk than I typically like to eat. At the same time, I mean, he fits right into everything I just said about Madison. And you just name the reasons. I mean, he's catching more passes. He's running more routes. Last week, we saw McNichols get a ton of targets. A lot of that was just sort of game script and late. We've definitely seen them use Henry more in the passing game. He's running more routes this year, and he's done it over multiple weeks than he was running last year. He's had more big target games than he had basically his whole career. He already has 14 catches. This dude has never caught 20 balls in a season, and we're going into week 5. And so, yeah, I mean, I think Henry clearly has a little bit of a receiving role. At the same time, they're giving him over 30 touches a game. I mean, even last year, we knew he was just this monster workhorse. His touch counts, his full season touch counts were massive. That was like 20. I think I wrote it in Stealing Signals this week. It's like 23, 24 touches a game. Right now, he's averaging 31. I mean, the year before, it was 21-ish for Henry, and then it was 23 or 24. And again, now we're up to 31 a game. I actually wrote in Signals, I was like, I've said this for several years and been wrong several times, but like, maybe Vrabel's actually taking it too far this time. Is he literally made of, is he literally Iron Man? I don't know, but
he's made of vibranium. Yeah,
he's made of something that's not human. But like in DFS, like that was more seasonal focus. In DFS, like I'm not like gonna fade a guy because I'm predicting that like a massive workload is gonna make him break down this week. Like I just want to play him. It's ridiculous.
That's how I feel similarly. Again, we'll get to some of these kind of leverage points or maybe some off the board stacks that we like. We'll get to that. We got plenty of time, but I do feel comfortable in the lineups that I will be playing. Right. We talked about it a little bit before the show. You even kind of hinted at it. The Raiders Bears game is very appealing to me from a passing game tournament perspective. It also provides some leverage off of Damian Williams. If I'm playing that, right, if you're playing Derek Carr, Justin Fields with a double stack or single stack, whatever, like, and if you can afford if Derrick Henry fits in that lineup, like just play him. You don't have to worry about that, right? If Alexander Madison fits on that team, you can just play him. No one's playing Derek Carr, no one's really playing Justin Fields, no one's playing Darnell Mooney, no one's playing A-Rob. So like if it fits on your team, that's like a theme for me that I felt this week is run. Now if you're playing, Cowboys Giants stacks, okay, now maybe we have to talk about what we're doing with Madison and Henry. But with, I think that there's a lot of really, really appealing games that we can stack up. So maybe they're also with like they're asking about Cousins, Jefferson type stuff. If I'm playing Cousins, Jefferson, Thielen, like with a Hawkinson bring back, if you can afford Derrick Henry, dude, just play Derrick Henry. I would not worry about his ownership in that lineup.
Exactly. So there's multiple ways we can play it. We don't want to take all the chalk, obviously. I'm finding that I like the builds where I'm eating it at running back more, where, like I just said, from a broad league-wide perspective, I'm more concerned about the ceilings at the position across the board. We have more on certain health situations. We have Joe Mixon in now, right? So like maybe if you're considering Samaje Perine, probably weren't, but it just throws another wrench there. We don't know how big Mixon's workload could be. I think you could play him if you wanted. You can certainly make these running back decisions. Damian Harris was the guy that I liked and I think pops a little bit. But then you see, I just saw that JJ Taylor's out, Ramondre Stevenson's up. Well,
little
they
scary.
Don't really know how they're going to replace the James White role. They haven't had Stevenson up in the last couple of weeks. Taylor fumbled last week. Now he gets deactivated. Harris did run a few more routes last week. There's a reason that I thought he was a little bit interesting. Maybe he starts to get a little bit of a fuller workload into the passing game. Mm-hmm. But now that they have Stevenson up, I'm less interested because now it's uncertain how that split's going to go. Obviously in tournaments, you can make these types of decisions. You can try to play for, okay, Damian Harris is going to look more like a 3-down back in a situation where they're, favored against Houston. But I think there's not enough ceiling across the position at running back is really the broad angle I'm taking. So where the builds that I like are the ones where I'm eating a little more chalk at running back, and maybe not both Henry and Madison, maybe one plus one of these other guys that we do know we like. I mean, like Damian, you can get to lower ownership than Madison and Henry will come in at where there's still decent plays. DeAndre Swift, Damian Harris, there's several guys that are make sense. Saquon Barkley, if you can get up to him, that have ceilings and everything else. You need Austin Eckler obviously has a ceiling. There's other guys. I'm not saying running back is completely barren, but it is easier for me to pivot off of the chalk in the passing game. Number one, you can get off the chalk in more ways. And number two, just the way scoring is going and the way the league is broadly, I feel more comfortable being on under-owned plays and just how we know scoring is, wide receivers way more high variance than running back. We just know that as a staple of DFS. You should be playing chalk at running back more likely. But also these big trends are speaking, I think, toward being willing to get off of the obvious plays in the passing game. They might make the obvious plays more projectable because we do know that a lot of these teams are going to pass for sure. But yeah, it just makes more sense to me for those two options. Where do you want to get off the chalk? Do you want to get off the chalk running backs that there's reason to really love them and there's not a lot of other good options? You really feel thin. You feel like you're sacrificing a lot of projected points. Or do you want to get off the chalk passing games where there's a lot more variance and so many teams are passing, games can blow up in ways that I just think that's a way clearer path for me.
And the interesting part about that is I feel like so far, we're in week 5 and I feel like through the first 4 weeks, that wasn't always the case. I felt like we had, until now we're starting to get all these injuries at running back, right? We're starting to get not only injuries, but, like the Dallas timeshare, there's a lot of issues like we've already outlined at running back.
Chase Edmonds could be fun, but he's hurt and he has a timeshare. Right?
right. I mean, I'm Lucy with the football with Chase Edmonds every single week. I played him again last week. He runs for a freaking 100 yards, like one of the first times in his career. But it still doesn't matter because of course he doesn't score touchdowns. Those are all for James. Those are all for James Conner. But running back has been a little bit wide open before, and because of the volatility of the position, like you outlined already, it has kind of been like, why would I play Saquon if Saquon is chalky when I could play Najee, Joe Mixon, Edmonds, right? I could play tons of different options through the first 4 weeks, right? I mean, even look at like week 1, it was like, well, we really wanted to jam CMC and Kamara, but Joe Mixon was there, Najee was there, et cetera, Austin Eckler, Jonathan Taylor, Antonio Gibson, right? There were all these options. We've now gotten a month through the season, and now we get a slate like this with Dalvin out, Montgomery out, Derrick Henry against the Jaguars. And there are some other options, like you said, but I feel like the pool of playable running backs has shrunk, and the distance between the best projected running back plays has really like gotten out of hand. Versus now we also simultaneously on this slate remove the Chiefs, remove the Bills, remove the Ravens, right? We removed the Rams, we removed the Seahawks, we removed like half the really appealing passing offenses in the NFL. So now we've got a situation where it's like, there's a couple good spots to attack from a stack perspective, but like they're kind of all the same. We could sit here and probably make a case for like almost every single game on this slate from a stack perspective, but running back is not that. So it can't make that. Yes, exactly. It is really kind of, using our friend Peter Over said it, the league has flipped on its head now just in this week 5 slate. So I felt like that was kind of the important theme to really talk about, because even like you and I have spent the first month being like, why am I going to play the chalk running back when there's, Joe Mixon is going to play every snap and he's 5%, for 6K or whatever. I don't think that is necessarily the same theme. So I do want to double back to a couple of these questions, just like kind of put a bow on the Madison thing and the Vikings thing. One person asked, with the Madison news, should I pivot from my Cousins and Jefferson stack? And absolutely not. You should absolutely stick with it. Yes, you're giving up maybe the best running back play, but you're like that leverage meter that you were just gauging, that leverage meter has just like shot absolutely through the roof. And the Cousins and Jefferson ownership is probably even lower now with Madison. It's probably tough to fit, but that's a lineup where I would want to get to Henry. I don't have a lot of Viking stacks, but I would love to get to Henry, because you can eat the chalk at that point, because like you said, you've already built so much leverage on that stack. A really appealing part of those game stacks also is that you can fill tight end with Hawkinson as your bring back from the Lions perspective. I do think some people are asking about Vikings as well. And if you're playing Vikings, I do really like Lions bringbacks. We know that they only have a handful of options. Even if you want to go to like Quintez Cephas, I think he's viable as well as a cheap option. But like you can fill your tight end spot with like the second highest upside tight end on the slate besides Darren Waller. You could fill running back with DeAndre Swift, which also kind of is like this compounding leverage against Alexander Madison on those teams. So I think that there's a lot of fun ways to go with that. And then and to your point, and I think it's not a bad point at all. I mean, it's an important point. Hawkinson is a little banged up. I like playing him, but also if you're not going to play him or Swift, then part of the fade Hawkinson narrative is like, he's just not that healthy, or Swift's not going to get a lot of targets. Then there's almost certainly going to be a cheap Detroit tight end who catches some passes, right? And so that's true. It becomes one of the most appealing cheap wide receiver spots, whether it's Cephas or Khalif Raymond would be the two that I would be most on. It's tough to pick it, but that's how you can save some salary too with the bringbacks. We kind of know who the Lions are going to use. I actually kind of like Cephas today, and I feel like he's actually pretty good outside of the Ravens game, which is kind of expected given the Ravens defense. He's actually drawn a pretty significant amount of targets, and he is going to be completely unowned as one of the people are going to go down much cheaper than him or up just a smidge to some other guys. Those guys, right. One other question: how much does Kamara's ownership fall with this Madison, Damian, Henry? Is anyone going to play Kamara? Are you playing Kamara? Play he definitely still has a ceiling if they just throw the ball, but they haven't. Right. I mean, so that's an interesting conversation, because if they throw the ball a little bit more, I think certainly Kamara can have a strong day. Last week, unless I'm mixing up my weeks already, everything's blurring together, but I believe it was just this past week that he had his first career zero target game. Zero targets, career high in rush attempts. We obviously need to see the targets. He's had a pretty solid target share up until last week's no target game. To me, that probably looks a lot like Austin Eckler back in week 1, where he didn't have any catches. Just kind of a blip, and especially when the Saints end up throwing more. I don't think Kamara is the new Derrick Henry from before, and Derrick Henry is the new Kamara, which was sort of a little joke we had last week. But I think he's a reasonable play. It's a really tough. He's not the Kamara of old. His floor is lower now. His ceiling is probably not as high now. He's not what sort of you remember is the way that I would put it. Yeah, it is such an interesting, that's got to be the perfect example of what the hell is going on at running back, right? Alvin Kamara was like a receiver borderline playing running back, and Derrick Henry was, they never throw it to him. And now like we're having 0 target Kamara games. We're having Derrick Henry get targeted like 3 or 4 times and a half in games. The running back position is very bizarre. We're gonna start to get into next. I'm gonna pivot to some of these stacks and stuff that we like, but I am gonna get a couple.
I gotta say real quick, I'm getting mildly trolled for mentioning Khalif Raymond. I honestly had not even considered him or looked at his price, and he's way too expensive. Don't play him. I figured he'd be I figured he'd be like mid-priced, like that.
I let that one slip. That's why I let Quintez Cephas. Ben's gonna play Khalif Raymond at the same price as like Jamar Chase.
That's not happening. There's no chance that's happening. I need to clarify that.
I am gonna stop and hit a couple of bullet points. I have been like, deep into NFL DFS, deep into the best ball stuff. Obviously, I'm doing the Spike Week stuff, and I still want to grind some of these other sports. I play college football. I've been playing preseason NBA. This week of preseason NBA has been like an absolute print fest, and all of that credit goes to the RG Premium guys. That's my one little plug. It's like, it's a real life testimonial, is that I use this product, especially for all these other sports that I'm really interested in playing, but frankly, I just don't have the time to do it. These guys are grinding out NBA preseason projections and absolutely crushing it. And they're in the Discord, providing news and updates and everything. And that goes for every single sport. So I know we're talking about NFL right now, but RG Premium, the stuff that you can get, the projections that you can get, everything for all these different sports is kind of insane. And it makes me a ton of money, even though I might be losing at NFL so far through the first month. I'm able to make it back with what the RG Premium guys are providing. The other thing, last week, if you remember, I actually hit one of our bets that we gave away for BetMGM, which if you use promo code GRINDERSBET on BetMGM, all you got to do is bet $10 and you get $200 instantly if your team scores a touchdown. So last week was Darnell Mooney week. You and I were messaging a little bit during the first quarter. Like, it was like Darnell Mooney, I think, hit his receiving prop on the first catch, or it was over instantly. So now I'm going to flip the script onto you. Have you looked at any player props or anything like that that you're interested in for this week? Or is there a player that you're like, he's just too cheap, and so maybe he's a good bet on any of his props?
Yeah, I mean, one of my favorites this week was Henry Ruggs, and I think he's getting open at will down the field. Last year, I wasn't really on him in draft season. Last year, he never had more than 5 targets in a game all year. This year, his season low was 5 targets. That was week 1. He's been at least at 6 in the 3 games since. He's earning more targets this year. It's a big deal. Carr missed him on that deep shot on Monday Night Football last week, late in the game. He also missed him the week before, but Ruggs still had a 50-yard catch earlier in that game. He was playing the Chargers last week, who had allowed 4 completions going into that game of more than 15 air yards all season. And Ruggs gets loose for a 50-yard TD. He also draws a DPI on a play that he almost caught and was wide open on the one that Carr missed him. So he generates 3 deep opportunities, 2 of which went for a catch and a DPI. The third should have been a long touchdown. Like, good opportunities. He's getting open, even against the best team in the league at preventing deep shots. And that's become a big part of their offense right now. They're throwing way more at the Raiders. I'm going back. I'm definitely going back to Justin Fields this week, which is ridiculous, but I'm doing it. And the way to play him, I think, is to stack him bringing back with Ruggs. Because if Ruggs hits, his yardage over is still pretty low because he hasn't been like that good yet. He wasn't that good last year. I got it at under 50 yards, and it's like he can hit that on one play. He did last week. So you hit that early in the game. Then you also, correlated what we needed from Fields for him to actually be good is that Nagy is sort of forced to open him up and not run the ball a ton. So you need the Raiders to be aggressive passing early and to hit on the big play early and to get out to a lead and then to force Fields to have to make plays with his legs and his arm. That's the correlation I like playing in the over.
Really, really, really like that. We also seem to have a type. We have a type in the types of players that we pick for this every single week. So I went KJ Hamler for the lock I went KJ Hamler for the old lock on the player prop a couple of weeks ago. Obviously, that did not go very well. Then we go to Darnell Mooney, this kind of home run threat, small little wide receiver. And now we're on to Henry Ruggs. Yeah. So next week is going to be, I don't know. We're going to have to find another, 5'9", 170 pound Tutu, maybe Tutu. We'll really push the limits and see if we can get Tutu Atwell to actually get on the field without blowing away in the wind next week. But it's a perfect segue. That game is one of my favorite tournament games of the week. And I really don't feel like people are giving it the, respect in terms of upside that it provides. And Henry Ruggs has got to be Henry Ruggs and Darnell Mooney, frankly, on both sides are like the epitome of a game that can kind of get nutty when you don't really think, you don't think Raiders Bears is like this game that can really shoot out or whatever, but you have these types of players on both sides that can just turn it into, the next thing you know, it's 42-35 and you didn't expect it, but Henry Ruggs caught a bomb and then Darnell Mooney caught a bomb and Darren Waller catches a few big ones over the middle, right? And the next thing you know, these offenses are just rolling. Yeah. And I don't really think that either running game is in an awesome spot. And so it just sets up perfectly for, like you said, either field stacks or I even like Derek Carr stacks.
Yeah, I think Carr stacks are good. I think the big issue for people not getting on the game is just the Bears. Like the 2 weeks ago, how horrible their game plan was against the Browns. Last week, it was a little better, but even as Fields got rolling and hit some deep shots, they just went to the run heavy. They only threw 17 passes all game. Even if Fields makes some plays and hits on some things, Nagy is almost the limiting factor. And then that becomes a limiting factor on the whole game. The thing that the angle I'm looking at it from is twofold. One, the Raiders really are one of the pass heaviest teams in early down, pass rate over expectation, all of those situations this year in a very positive way that I think could influence the game, sort of force the Bears to come along if they hit early, right? But Carr's been slow to start every game this year. So there are ways where he's slow to start, the Bears are running, and there's 6 points in the first half in this game. That's part of the reason I think people don't like it, and you'll be dead. Yeah. But if the Raiders early passing can get you there, and then two, that maybe Nagy has just sort of been too conservative, right? He was too conservative in the first game, too conservative in the second game, but Fields did enough good things last week that he's sort of inching towards potentially opening it up. And then along with that point is they had never officially named Fields a starter, but then this week they named him the starter. And it's okay, now we actually have to let him do things, right? And so maybe there's that. So it's really for Chicago, and then the other team is for Cincinnati. Like you mentioned the Green Bay Cincinnati game. Is this the week that those two passing games will actually throw more? And I, we talk every week about we're buying too much into the early season trends. We can say the exact same thing. I said this about Fields last week. I said it about Burrow in the past. I still think both of those offenses have to throw more in the future of this season. I don't think what we've seen so far defines their season. I don't know if that's this week, but I'm willing to build some GPP lineups that are built around that premise. Saves money, and there's a lot of ways to play those teams that they're not in. People are not interested because they have not thrown a lot yet. There's things that can force them to throw. All it really requires is a couple of fluky plays, a fumbled punt return, a couple early TDs for the Raiders. Now the Bears have to throw. Same thing with the Bengals. Mixon's banged up. Packers go score a little bit early on them, and they might just finally turn Burrow a little bit loose this week. So those are the two offenses for me that people I think are really concerned about the pass volume, and there's a ceiling there. I don't know how high it is. I don't know if this is the week it'll hit, but it's definitely not being priced into the salaries or the ownership, and so you have an opportunity to potentially leverage that.
Yeah, I think the people are asking for stacks, and it's funny because we're literally talking about some of these stacks, and maybe they just didn't like the Raiders Bears, which I totally understand. But a game that maybe is a little bit sexier that I do think is really, really viable is that Bengals Packers game. You have the Davante Adams thing, and Davante Adams, we talked a lot about the ownership with the running backs and all of that. Davante Adams is the one other piece on this slate that you have to be really, really cognizant of how you handle his ownership. Right now we have Madison, you have Damian Williams, maybe a little bit of Fournette. I think Fournette is going to trail back a little bit now with the Madison thing. Derrick Henry and Davante Adams is huge. If you get into smaller field stuff, this isn't the best example. Not everyone's, I'm not playing the Thunderdome either, but let's say you're playing the Thunderdome, right? This super, super, super small field. I'm telling you, Davante Adams is going to be 60% owned in that. So now start to trickle that ownership down as you raise the field size, and think about that. You get into a 200-man field, we're talking about 40-something% Davante Adams. You get into a 1,000-man field, we're talking about 35% Davante Adams, right? He's just going to be super, super popular because it's easy to afford him. And he's just, he's underpriced too. I mean, we saw last year what he got into the mid to upper 9Ks or something like that. Like he was just an absolute slam dunk at this price. And so if you want to play him, what's a way to do it? Well, Joe Burrow is cheap. T. Higgins is cheap. Jamar Chase is cheap. So Tyler Boyd is cheap. And there's no great way to pick those guys, right? That was going to be my next question is I like that Bengals stack a lot. You can use Davante as a bring back. There's other cheap Packers pieces. It's a really fun game to start to stack up, but how are you going about picking those pieces?
Yeah, no, I think that's a challenge. Chase is the most expensive. Obviously you have Higgins coming off injury. Boyd is not always considered the sexiest. And so they all have sort of their warts. And look, I think you can kind of play any of them. Boyd is probably the one that has the lowest ceiling. So to me, it's just like, okay, you either find the salary for Chase or you bet on Higgins. Higgins is a guy that I think is one of the clearest buy lows in season long and is going to be an absolute star still this year. And I have all these very positive takes on him. I'm seeing like a little bit of ownership for all those guys, though. I'm kind of wondering about that. That's why I mentioned Burrow. Like the way that I kind of like playing this, I absolutely think when the Bengals start throwing more, they've been way more efficient this year. Burrow was actually really good last year, except for when he was targeting AJ Green. So the fact that Jamar Chase has been so good and so efficient early means that, look, he was already really good with Higgins and Boyd last year, and now he has Chase. He's thrown multiple TDs in every game, even at the limited volume. He's been efficient. And I absolutely think when they start throwing more, Burrow's going to have some of these 4 TD games where you're like, yeah, he has a ceiling, even if he's not a big rusher. So for me, it's like, I think you can play Burrow and double stack it with 2 of these guys who are really good receivers in a concentrated passing game. I know last week Uzama had a couple of TDs. He didn't do anything different than he did in other games. He only got, I think, like 5 targets, just, high efficiency spike for a tight end. I don't expect him to do that every single week. Maybe he'll have a couple more like that this year, but for the most part, the targets have been heavily concentrated on these 3 receivers. And with Higgins back, it's not that hard to go, okay, I'm going to take Burrow, pick 2 of these receivers. I know I'm going to get all the Cincinnati passing game points more or less. And, obviously you can't pick all 3 of them, or, you could, but I'm probably not going that far. Yeah. But, and then you're betting the only bet you're making is that the Bengals get put into a script where Burrow has to throw 35 times for the first time this year. And if he throws 35 times, I think the efficiency is probably going to be there to a certain degree. Yeah, man. I mean, that's the way I like playing it, is going to Burrow. And I think there is a ceiling there.
Yeah. There's small play volume concerns in that game, which is honestly, that's like the main thing that's keeping me a little bit weary, is just how slow both, I don't know if the Bengals will continue to play that slow, but I do feel like the Packers are always going to continue to play that. That's just what Aaron Rodgers does. So there's a little bit of play volume concerns. So this next question that I'm going to get to is like the perfect synopsis to me of how wide open this slate is from a stack perspective. I just want to like reinforce that running back versus stack, and wide receiver conversation that we had earlier. Is Travis asked, like, how do you feel about Brady? And I will say on DraftKings, Brady is like ungodly expensive. And I can't personally click on Brady, but I do think that game is also kind of interesting to a similar level that the Bengals and Packers game is interesting from a stack perspective. For one thing, you can do something like, if you don't want to pay up for Brady and you want to, this is also another comment that I want to get to before we, wrap up in the next 20 minutes, is you can do something like play Trey Lance instead of Tom Brady, but stack up that Bucs game, because Tom Brady is super expensive. And we know that they're going to throw, and people are going to play Fournette because of like the matchup and everything. I'm not sure that any of that matters for Tom Brady. I think Tom Brady's going to throw to his guys. They're all affordable, but it's also a similar situation to the Bucs, where like, you tell me how to pick between Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, and Antonio Brown, because I don't know, and so there's a couple that are cheaper. I guess maybe that makes sense. But then on the flip side, we know the Bucs secondary is ravaged by injury, and you can't run on them. So everyone just passes, which makes Jalen Waddle interesting and makes Mike Gesicki interesting. So you have this like natural game stack environment where like the Bucs are going to score. We know the Bucs are going to score, and we know the Dolphins are going to have to throw. And so that game is also like similarly interesting to me as the Bengals game. Are you doing anything with that, Dolphins, especially now? And just to make sure everyone's clear, Devontae Parker is out for the Dolphins, which is really what makes Jalen Waddle and Gesicki interesting.
Yeah, and Fuller was already out. I mean, yeah, no, I really like that game. Tampa's another team that, mentioned kind of at the top from a big picture perspective, probably the clearest team. And it's not like it's a big surprise, but they're very much embracing early passing. They struggled last week in New England. Brady had whatever you want to call it. Brady had nerves, et cetera, et cetera. It would not be all that surprising just from, jumping down narrative street to see Brady come back and like, oh yeah, I'm still good. Have the angry Tom narrative going where he doesn't like that he didn't get to show up Belichick a little bit more and tanks that out on the Dolphins. And to your point, I mean, the Dolphins are, again, another team. Like they have been passing. I mean, they've been in some game scripts where it's forced that, but we didn't see like Myles Gaskin at all last week. He was actually the lowest snap percentage by a long shot since the beginning of last year for him. He's missed some time and stuff, but every game he's played has been over 50% snap share. He goes all the way down to 23%. Saw some comments that it was because he's been pretty poor in pass protection. Malcolm Brown's been better in pass protection. So the Dolphins basically just immediately said, look, we don't even care about our running backs to the point that we're going to play Malcolm Brown because he can pass block. That's all we care about. And Malcolm Brown sucks. Like, he's terrible. He got a goal line carry and ran right to the back of his lineman, and it could have, found an angle on either side of his lineman. Literally just ran right into him. He's not good. Anyone who tries to tell me he's even halfway decent is.
I played Myles Gaskin last week, and let's just say when you pay $5,300 for a guy that gets 2 carries and 3 yards, and that's the only stats he records, right? It was probably not a very good.
But the Dolphins are definitely leaning towards being willing to pass. So this is absolutely a game that can shoot out. I mean, you have both from a coaching standpoint, from a intent standpoint. Both of these teams are willing to completely abandon the run, like we've seen. Like that's the extremity, like how extreme teams are willing to be into their pass trends. Miami did that last week. Tampa's done that multiple times. The game has to stay close. Miami has to hit on some efficient plays and be able to score a little bit, because if Tampa gets way out ahead, I mean, it might just be a gross game, but definitely like that game.
Yeah, I think that game and the Bengals game are great examples of, it may not even have to be the most exciting. It doesn't have to be, so when the Chiefs play, you need the Chiefs to score 40 something, right? Because if you're going to play $8,500 Tyreek Hill or $8,500 Travis Kelce, $8,500 Patrick Mahomes, and then you have some kind of bringbacks on the other side, you need tons of points and tons of touchdowns. So I played a couple of weeks ago when the first game that T Higgins missed. Deontay Johnson, they played the Steelers, and Deontay Johnson also missed. That game finished like 24-13 or something. Like, it was not pretty. But when the targets are so condensed and the teams are throwing, the Bengals didn't necessarily throw a ton in that game, but the Steelers did. When the targets are so condensed, like, everybody's getting there for fantasy. And so there's only room for like upside, basically. And that's what has me really interested in these games, is that like, the Dolphins have to throw today because they're going to give up points and they're not going to be able to run. And so like, there's only really room for upside for Mike Gesicki and Jalen Waddle. If you want to throw darts at somebody else, go, be my guest. There's only really room for growth for Antonio Brown and Chris Godwin and Mike Evans. I guess if people like, I get the Fournette thing. I'm not playing Fournette today, but those kinds of games, same thing for the Bengals. It's like, they're all 5K. Like, everybody's 5K. It's like there's only room for growth when the offense only throws to 3 dudes, and you're going to have to throw. So like, neither of those games need to be 42-35. Those games could be 28-21 and like literally GPP winning games. Yeah. And so those are the kinds of games I'm really interested in this week. And it kind of opens up the whole slate for you. Another game that we'll start to get to some questions here, guys, I promise. But like, you wanted to talk about stacks, and like, this is the perfect example of how many stacks are open to you. And they asked about the Browns Chargers. I think that's another one. I was
going to say the same thing. That this question about how about Herbert stacks was just an example of how many options there are that are good options. I think that's a perfect game environment, in the sense that everyone is kind of convinced the pace, the play volume might not be great because of the Browns tendencies, the Browns have won their last 3 games against the Texans, Bears, and Vikings, and pretty much controlled each and not thrown a lot. You go back to week 1 against the Chiefs, they threw with more intent. They had their most total yards of the season. That game had over 60 total points in it. They're playing at the Chargers, who just beat the Chiefs, who look like legitimately one of the best teams in the AFC. All you need is Herbert to come out play well early. I mean, look, the Browns have a good D. They have a great pass rush. There are concerns here, but all you really need is the Herbert and the Chargers passing game to come out firing and scoring some points and force the Browns to play with intent. I was just talking about what our team's willing to change their tendencies. There are certain teams that are just not. The Browns are willing to pass. They are. I mean, they showed us that in week 1. They have not had to show us it for 3 straight weeks. So people are just assuming that they are not that team. They did it a lot late last year. They did it a lot in important games. They did it into the postseason in important games. They got ahead on the Steelers in the postseason and continued to throw. They wanted to boat race them. They wanted to run away with that game against the Steelers in the postseason. And you look at the games they've played so far this year, they did it against the Chiefs, a team that they wanted to beat, and they very nearly did. That could come down to, like seeding tiebreakers or any of that stuff for the AFC. They're very aware of that. Analytically heavy team. They knew that head-to-head game really mattered. They didn't do it in games where it didn't matter, against the Texans and a couple, sort of also ran NFC teams, and the Bears and the Vikings. This is the game at the Chargers. They're going to be looking at and saying the exact same thing. We have to be willing to get aggressive because we need to win this game for potential seeding, tiebreakers, whatever. It's a huge game for the Browns on the road at the Chargers. I think all you need, again, is the Chargers to score a little bit early. If the Browns get ahead, they'll run. But I absolutely think that, that probably would happen in LA. Like I'm sort of leaning more towards the Chargers winning this game. At the same time, I think almost regardless, we're going to see Cleveland throw more than they have the last 3 weeks, and the field's is not weighing that in.
Yeah, and isn't it so interesting that Odell Beckham at a basically similar price last week was like the steamiest play of the year? He went from someone people were like, oh yeah, he makes an interesting GPP play, to like almost the highest owned wide receiver on the slate. Like as you rose up in stakes and got into smaller fields, I mean, he was like 25% owned. Odell Beckham was, and like he was a good play. There was no arguing about whether he was a good play or not, like in a vacuum. But like, he got crazy steam. Now this week, we get so anchored to, okay, he failed last week and I have a reason to not play him this week, so I'm just going to stay away. It's like, why can't he convert one of those big plays this week? I understand the Chargers defense schematically, like, trust me, I know all of that kind of stuff, but we also saw that didn't matter for Tyreek against the Eagles, right? We get too anchored to some of these things and how much they matter. And so I think that game is actually really, really interesting for tournaments. Odell makes an unbelievable flop lag play, like one of the best of all time, like literally one of the best flop lag plays of all time. And sometimes the market will get attached to those guys, but they are not doing that with Odell this week.
And I didn't, in my whole little soliloquy there, I didn't mention the Chargers D. I was just talking about Ruggs last week. He did beat them multiple times. Like, they're not completely infallible. They came back and had the big DPI. But the big thing for me, again, is just game script and forcing the Browns to throw. And if they have to throw, like they have talent, they have a well-designed passing game. I think they'll hit on some plays. I like Beckham too. I think it's great. I mean, this is like 1%.
Yes.
I don't like love him from a cost adjusted perspective or anything, but in big tournaments, you're going to get him at like 1%.
And I mean, Keenan is too cheap. I really like Keenan. Mike Williams is going to be completely unowned, despite the fact that he has he dominated the first month of the season because he got priced up a little bit. But both of those guys have crazy upside.
He could have had a long touchdown last week. Herbert just missed him. One down game, and now we're completely off Mike Williams. That doesn't make sense either.
Same thing. This one, I'll take my wide receiver card and throw it away for a second. But Nick Chubb is super cheap in DFS this weekend. Same thing. Kareem Hunt is mixing in a lot, and Chubb hasn't had any of the big games. But if we're talking about how did the Browns kind of get to start being aggressive? Well, what if the Browns get ahead, like you said? I mean, Chubb is going to be able to run, and he's going to run efficiently. He has still run efficiently this year. He just hasn't had any of the monster games. And yes, Hunt has mixed in maybe a little more than we want, but that doesn't take away from Chubb having the ability to have 150 and 2. Like, honestly, that absolutely is in the cards.
Honestly, like, this is a total, just a total, whatever it is, gambler's fallacy or, he's due type stuff. But like, you go back and look at Chubb and Hunt over the last few years. When one guy hits a little bit, for a couple of weeks, they seem to like get the other guy more involved. I mean, they almost like try to balance it. I honestly got when I was looking at it, reading it, or writing signals this week, I was looking back at weeks 1 and 2. Chubb had, I think, 3 touchdowns over the last couple of weeks. He has not scored. Hunt has scored. That makes me, maybe it shouldn't. Maybe this is a total, bias and a fallacy, but that makes me think that it's more likely because he hasn't for 2 weeks that Chubb will have a 2 touchdown game. And that, probably wrong, but that's kind of how the Browns have played it. Listen,
the London game is almost over right now, and I don't know if you saw I hope you're starting to get your money that you're going to owe me together at the end of the week. Kyle Pitts was also due, and he has 9 catches for 119 yards and a touchdown.
Yeah,
today.
Well, I saw the first half. I haven't been watching.
Mike Davis also due. He just scored a touchdown for the Falcons, and so this might just be the week of the player that is due. So I'm going to make my lineups with that in mind, and I suggest everyone do the same. No, but seriously, there were a couple of questions and one more little before we wrap up. One little stack I want to hit on.
Before we get to that, the idea of being due is obviously a terrible process. At the same time, there's worse process you could have this week. We're still early in the season, and there are still guys that are actually going to do things that people are just assuming can't. And I mean, you just made a great example of Kyle Pitts.
It's also really not like that they're due. It is just that they have not performed to the expectation based on the usage and the role and everything that they've had. Exactly. And that's the case with all these guys that we're talking about, right? If Keenan Allen had scored the amount of touchdowns that Mike Williams had, or if Nick Chubb would have just converted some touchdowns, right? We would be talking, there would be different prices in DFS, and they would be different ownerships. And that's not always the case. Somebody asked about a Darnold stack, a Lawrence or a Darnold stack. So I am going to hit on the Lawrence thing really quick. This Jets team that is getting ransacked by the Falcons who are not good and don't have Calvin Ridley, that Jets team, they beat the Titans. And so I know we're out on the Jaguars and everything like that, but like, this is the Jaguar spot. And so I'm probably going to play a Trevor Lawrence stack. AJ Brown has almost become the Odell Beckham of last week. Everybody is like, AJ Brown is the obvious tournament play, but I still don't know if I can get it away from AJ Brown on at least a team. But I think that game is a really fun stack. And then a quick note, I'm going to let you talk about AJ Brown before we wrap up, because it would be really terrible of me if I didn't do that. The interesting thing about the Darnold stack for me is if you go to Yahoo, okay, and you look at the projections for Yahoo, the Darnold stuff is like mildly interesting to me. That game is mildly interesting on like DraftKings. But if you go to point per dollar rankings in our projections on Yahoo, Robbie Anderson is number 2 from a flex perspective. Robbie Anderson is number 2. DJ Moore is number 5. Gainwell is up there. Rager is up there. Like that whole game on Yahoo especially is like the most underpriced game. And that is not the case across the other sites. So if you go to Yahoo, that's a game where like I would try to get my exposure on a site like that. And if you go there and use promo code Grinders25 and you deposit, you'll get a free $25 on Yahoo. So that game, I try to do that, like look at different sites, right? Look at the pricing and the projections on each site. And that game is one I haven't been able to get to on like DraftKings, but Yahoo, it makes total sense. So let's talk about AJ Brown. We need to, like, I feel like that is the elephant in the room where we had a minute left and we haven't talked about AJ Brown. I do think he's getting steamed a little bit from an ownership perspective, but he also makes just so much sense in tournaments. How are you handling AJ Brown?
Yeah, I think with the steam, it feels a lot like last week with DJ Moore. I said I wasn't playing him. I kind of hated that because he was so expensive, because I love him so much. And if he ends up going off, at least it'll be good for my seasonal teams. He scored 2 touchdowns. It was fun because I'm so heavily invested in DJ Moore and high stakes and everywhere else. But also it was like, man, I didn't play the guy that I know is this good, even, just because of ownership. Look, I'm biased between these guys. These are like 2 of my biggest brand guys.
Yeah.
I'm playing AJ Brown this week. This dude has performed coming off injury before. Last year, look, call it pattern matching. He was hurt early in the year. People were a little down on him. He came back starting in week 5 and was just absolutely a monster the rest of the season. Julio's out. The Jaguars can't guard anyone. They were so bad in the passing game last week. They lost to the Jets. No one could get open. The efficiency wasn't there for Tannehill. I absolutely think they're going to come back this week and be like, we are just going to pepper AJ Brown with targets and ask him to make plays. The way that Derrick Henry fails is that they actually are like, hey, we've been giving him 31 touches a game. Maybe we should pass some of the offensive load off to someone else. And so basically it's, we're throwing to AJ Brown. He's making big plays. He's scoring long touchdowns. And he hasn't really done it so far this year. He absolutely has the capability of having some big, long touchdowns. It's probably the smart thing not to play him coming off an injury. I think some of the points per dollar and projections and things are like, look, this is not that great. He's not that good at leverage anymore, to your point. Like the whole reason to play him was to get off of Henry, and he's not actually that great of leverage anymore. it's probably good process to be off of him. I'm going to play him.
So I will say, I felt like last week that DJ Moore was a guy like we talked about because of his ownership. I'm like, oh, this is good process to just not play him. And then we got down and we saw the ownership, and it didn't really get out of hand. And there were absolutely ways to, you know, quote unquote, play the best play in DJ Moore and be totally fine. And I feel the same way about AJ Brown today. So I went 0% DJ Moore, and I feel like maybe I'm overreacting to that from last week, but the best AJ Brown is one of the best plays in my opinion at wide receiver. And so I'm not going overboard. Like if he were this crazy leverage on Derrick Henry, like we maybe thought coming into the week, I probably would have played 100%, literally played 100% AJ Brown, but I'm not doing that, but I'm also not going to be so stubborn as to go away with 0%.
Yeah.
So I see, we're about to wrap up. So yeah. I'm sorry. I'm going to cut you off. I am going to say people are asking some questions in the chat. Make sure you stick around. Ben and I are about to sign off before we wrap up here. And there is crunch time with the crunch time crew coming up after us for the half hour leading up until lock. And they will field all of your questions, especially cash game questions, all of that. I'm sorry we couldn't touch on everything. You guys are awesome in the chat. What I like to do every single week, and I think we're hitting about 500 on these kind of crazy hot takes. So week 5 will be the deciding factor whether you guys have to stick with us and keep watching. Darnell Mooney was a smash last week. We talked about like fading CMC early. We talked about some of these fun different things that have worked out really well in tournaments. We like to wrap up with a kind of a bold take, a flag plan, if you will, a hot take for the slate. I'm going to make you go first this time. So what do we got? What do we got today for a hot take?
Well, it's not really hot enough, but the thing I was just going to chime in and say was that AJ Brown will come under his projected ownership. I think he does for the reasons you said, but actually I'll do Henry Ruggs. Henry Ruggs is a smash hit, sub 5% ownership. That's the one that I'll take as my flag plan.
You have really got me excited. I currently have, like I said, 3 teams, and Henry Ruggs is on one of them. So you've got me even more excited for Henry Ruggs. My take would be, I'm gonna be stubborn. And I feel like maybe this is lazy because I come in every single week and I just say, guys, we have to stack against the Lions. Like we just have to play guys against the Lions. But this week you have Alexander Mattison that has now opened up. That's going to be like, I don't know, the most popular player of the year so far. And I like him and I'm going to play Alexander Mattison. But there has maybe never been a greater leverage point than the Vikings passing game. No one is playing Kirk Cousins. No one is playing Justin Jefferson. No one is playing Adam Thielen. If you need cheap guys, they got KJ Osborne. You need to fill tight end. Guess what? Tyler Conklin, TJ Hawkinson on the other side. And they're just going to, you can score at will on the Detroit Lions. And so my flag plant will basically be the leverage, all of the leverage on Alexander Mattison. And I actually think that Alexander Mattison can be okay. Like you can still want to play Alexander Mattison in cash games and in tournaments elsewhere. And like Kirk Cousins throws for 304 and Madison's okay, but Justin Jefferson is the smash. And so it is the Vikings passing game for me. So play your Henry Ruggs with either Darnell Mooney, Damian Williams, something like that with your Vikings passing game. And it's wheels up today, and bet on the Henry Ruggs over on BetMGM. And that'll wrap us up for the GPP final takes. Sorry to the Crunch Time crew for running a couple minutes behind. Also, wheels up Kyle Pitts. Ben's going to owe me $100 at the end of the year because Kyle Pitts is the man. And for us, I will see you guys in week 6.
Back in the Fantasy Bar, 6 plays for you for week 5 on Fanduel and Draftkings, including a couple value plays I'm eyeing this weekend at wide receiver. I think bounces back in a big way. My favorite correlation plays, and of course, a beast of the night under 6,500 on both Fanduel and Draftkings. Who is it? Belly up to the Fantasy Bar and find out. Welcome in, guys. Week 5 edition Beers Daily Fantasy 6-pack. Good to be back here in the Fantasy Bar. 6 guys fresh off the tap for you on FanDuel and DraftKings. Thank you, as always, for stopping by and checking out the video. Now, before we get into things, couple things. Thumbs up button. Appreciate it, guys. You've been doing a great job with that. That is the tip jar here. Make sure we knock that out, as well as subscribe to the channel. Also, make sure you head over to scoresandodds.com/beer for all of your sports betting needs. Tons of information over there. Go and check that out today. Weekly, monthly, yearly subscriptions available over there. And of course, FanDuel.com/OG. Come and play with Head Shopper Notorious and myself, a weekly $7 single entry contest with big prizes at the end. The winner is going to walk away with $5,000. It's a cumulative leaderboard as well. Go and check it out today. FanDuel.com/OG, FanDuel.com/OG, that is. And make sure you're listening every single Wednesday to the OG's podcast, breaking down everything in the NFL. All right, let's get to the plays here for week 5. We're going to start at wide receiver in the mid-range with Marvin Jones Jr. of the Jaguars. I love the spot here for Marvin Jones. We know DJ Chark going to be out here a while. A lot of people going to go to Laviska Shenault. Had a decent game against Cincinnati. He's cheaper. I think that's the route people are going to go here with the Jacksonville receivers. Only 3 targets for Marvin Jones last week, I think, is definitely an anomaly. Was seeing over 9 targets per game weeks 1 through 3. I think we get back to that level of targets here, especially against the Tennessee Titans. We know the Titans are going to do their damage, whether it's Derrick Henry, Ryan Tannehill. We know they're going to score points here, but if they do, and even if they don't, they have struggled against the wide receiver. In fact, most fantasy points allowed so far this season. Week in, week out, we've seen wide receivers have massive games last week. Corey Davis, Jamison Crowder of the lowly Jets got it done. I think the Jaguars do the same here. Don't be afraid to go back to Marvin Jones here in a great matchup with the Tennessee Titans. All right, let's go to the running back position. I promise you guys it's underpriced. For me, that's Saquon Barkley of the Giants. So $7,300 on DraftKings, $7,800 on FanDuel. You compare that to some of the other stud, high-end workhorse type running backs, and this price really lagging behind. So I think it's only a matter of time before his prices are back in that stratosphere. So let's buy low here while we have the opportunity. Been great the last couple weeks. The snaps have ticked up. The involvement has picked up. The touchdowns have been there as well. 3 touchdowns over the last 2 games alone, 11 catches over that time span. And we saw them really utilize him as a wide receiver in that New Orleans game. I think you're going to see more of the same here against Dallas. First of all, you may be without Sterling Shepard, Darius Slayton once again, so they're going to be thin going into this game. Not only that, but the matchup here screams throw the ball to the running back. Saquon, good history against Dallas. Dallas, most receptions allowed to the running back position in the entire league. Great matchup here. Tremendous prices. Take advantage.
What's up, everybody? 12:30 Eastern here, and you are tuned into Crunch Time right here on RotoGrinders. I'm your host, Justin Carlucci, alongside of Kristi and Dan, and of course, producer Devin. You've probably been rocking with him throughout the morning, so big shout out to Devin for keeping this train rolling right along here. So, Kristi, how's it going? We got some more news today before lineup lock, some integral stuff. Man, Alexander Madison, huh? How about it?
Exactly. I know it. It kind of came down to the wire. At least we didn't get it right while it was on the show or anything like that. But yeah, definitely something for us to talk about for sure.
Mr. Tuttle, good to see you again on another Sunday. How are things going?
Going well. Yeah, I missed you guys last week. I had to do a wedding. Who schedules a wedding on football Sunday? Finally get to watch football all day today. Got the family out of the house, so it's just football all day for me.
Yeah, they owe it to you, man. You're owed one for missing a week. I totally understand. A couple quick plugs before we dive into it. BetMGM, get over there. Promo code GRINDERSBET and bet $10 to get $200 instantly when your team scores a touchdown. Over on Yahoo, promo code GRINDERS25 with a capital G. That's GRINDERS25 for a free $25 bonus on your first deposit. Of course, check out RG Premium. I'm sure most of you are in with Premium by now. A lot of flexibility and specific packages you can kind of mix and match there. Like and subscribe to RotoGrinders, and of course, our daily fantasy football podcast feed. Make sure you're subscribing and you get those push notifications when some new audio content comes up throughout the week. So just to summarize here, obviously the big news is Dalvin Cook out and Alexander Mattison is going to be very popular, and we will get to that soon. And I feel for those season longers who took Dalvin Cook, 2 overall, something like that so far. Tough one. Hopefully you got the handcuff there. Cortland Sutton and Teddy Bridgewater are both active today. Ramondre Stevenson is active, so maybe we'll have some Patriots questions. I don't know what to think about Damian Harris in that situation anymore. Obviously, it's the Texans who have just been getting throttled by everybody, so interesting there. And Joe Mixon, we thought that was going to be the big news. Turns out it's like 1B now, but Joe Mixon is active. To what degree is anyone's guess, kind of see what some beat writers are saying. And you just have to take everything with a grain of salt anymore when beat writers on Twitter or whoever are guessing how much of a workload someone's going to get. But we will get our best calculated guesses from Tuttle and Creighton in regard to, P. Ryan and Mixon and some other things lately. So let's hop right into it here, and we'll go position by position, and then we'll take some questions from the YouTube chat. And thanks for participating as we get closer to lock here. So I'll start with Kristi, and of course, as usual, we'll start with quarterback. So talk to me about the position here, cash and GPP. What's on your mind today, Kristi?
Yeah, so I think for quarterback, it's kind of interesting. I think a lot of the chalk is going to condense around Trey Lance because of his price. And then, of course, in the Giants-Dallas game with Jones and Prescott, I think those are going to be a lot of your chalkier cash game plays. Kyler Murray, I think, is certainly in the conversation too. His price is certainly up there, but he continues to get it done. On the tournament side, some plays that I really, really like and think are going to go a little bit overlooked. One, pretty high on Joe Burrow. We talked a little bit beforehand on the Cincinnati Green Bay game, and I think Burrow is a fantastic GPP play. We talked about Jair Alexander being out, so that certainly makes him more viable. Also like Kirk Cousins quite a bit. Looking at that Minnesota-Detroit game, Cousins typically plays great against the Lions, and he and Jefferson always have huge upside. We talked about Madison too. So those are a couple of plays that I think are that really stand out for GPP. And then I'll throw Tom Brady in there too. He should have to throw it a ton against Miami. He's got a lot of weapons and strong GPP play there as well.
Okay. And one more injury note is T. Higgins is in today, so he's back. And you mentioned the Bengals pass game there. Just another hand in the pot there for Joe Burrow, which could make things a little more complicated if you're trying to target, some of these Bengals receivers, but more weapons at Burrow's disposal. So Tuttle, talk to me about quarterback today.
Yeah, I'm on board with the Burrow Bengals take as well. I was hoping Mixon would be out, and then they'd just have to rely on the passing game even more. But it kind of seems like he'll be hobbled at best, so he might not be 100%. So they'll have to go there too, to the passing game still. Probably just like inflicting pain on myself for this one, but Justin Fields, like I think it's a pretty decent spot to go back to it. Like he was looking at pretty chalky option last week, and like things have not been good. But it was also the Detroit Lions. They were milking a 21-0 lead. Like things went pretty poorly for him game script wise. The rushing touchdowns went to David Montgomery. And so like I do think it's a pretty good buy low spot on him. He's really cheap still. We know he has rushing upside. It's just a matter of if play calling will go in his favor today. I'm not 100% positive it will. But I think it's worth taking a shot at low ownership. And I like him a lot just because I like Darren Wall. I like paying out for Waller on DraftKings too. So even doing like a bring back with Waller in that game. I like quite a bit for tournaments.
Yeah, you know what, quarterback, I kind of like some of the leverage opportunities. You mentioned Cousins, Kristi, and as a roller coaster of a ride as the Titans have been, I don't mind Tannehill and maybe pairing him up with AJ Brown to get some leverage off of Henry as well. So I do have some Titans and some Vikings builds, to kind of back, on the flip side of my Madison and Henry shares as well. So let's get into running backs then. Obviously, the elephants in the room here are two of the highest projected owned guys in DraftKings. We have Alexander Madison projected at 33% at 5,500. Derrick Henry not too far behind, 9K he is on DK against the Jaguars, and of course Henry, the hometown narrative around that, and he always rips the Jaguars, it seems like, at 27% on DK. So Kristi, talk to me about Madison, Henry, and then the rest of the field here. Leonard Fournette very cheap, Saquon in a little good game environment. What do you got today?
Yeah, exactly. I think, the chalk is going to condense for cash plays, Madison and Henry. They're great plays. Madison, he's just going to get the ball a ton. It's a great matchup for him. So I like those plays a lot, but I think there's going to be a ton of ways to get a little bit contrarian for running back. I'll also mention Damian Williams in particular on Fanduel. He's priced so low. So I think he makes a good cash play over there as well. At 5,800, just way too cheap. You mentioned Leonard Fournette. He's certainly in the cash game conversation as well. And then if you take a look at some of the other guys, Saquon Barkley, that game is going to be a great game. I think Saquon, he is priced still too cheap, for the matchup and for what he's really doing. He's a top 5 back for sure. And the production is going to come. So I like him a ton. One of the guys I think is going to go way overlooked, and the Chargers are just not good against the run. I like Nick Chubb a ton. No one's going to play him again today because of all the other chalk plays out there. James Robinson continues to get it done as well. So I like him a lot, and his price is really good on DraftKings. Zeke has had a questionable tag on. He is going to play today, but I certainly like him, and he has been getting it done as well. Austin Eckler, I think, is a really good GPP play as well. And then, guys like Kamara is certainly going to get overlooked. A lot of people are going to be focusing on Henry. And if you try to get Davante Adams in your lineup and such, he'll again go overlooked as well. But I would definitely say Chubb is probably up there as one of the top GPP plays for me. But I also like a lot of the chalk that's up there as well.
All right, Tuttle, you look enthused. Talk to me about figuring out this position here.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough to get away with the chalk or get away from chalk. I think like Henry is so difficult to figure out. It's usually one of those things where if he's chalk, I'm just going to fade him. But there's no denying it's such a good spot for him. And it's like, if you're fading him, you're not fading him because you think he's a bad play. You're fading him and hoping that even if he gets 30 points, the price is just too prohibitive to not make him optimal, is essentially what it is. He's such a good play. Guys that Kristi did not mention, I think Aaron Jones is a pretty strong tournament option. I don't have a whole lot of him, but I think he's like a very sharp leverage play off of Davante Adams. And I do think that Burrow double stack will be fairly high owned. So I like even just using him as the bring back as opposed to Davante and those teams, I think will be enough just to differentiate you enough. There was one other guy. Oh, Chase Edmonds was Q all week. Overnight's reports say he's going to be good to go. I'm interested in him. Obviously, he does not have the goal line work, which is the big knock against him. But Edmonds, in terms or using him in game stacks, if you're playing Trey Lance, I think is a pretty strong tournament play too.
Okay, sounds good. Let's keep it going here. Let's move over to wide receivers. So, Kristi, talk to me here. Are you thinking about it? Some leverage with some of these Vikings pass catchers here? I mean, Detroit is such a easy targetable team here, and we are getting single-digit projected ownership on Thielen and Jefferson. So that is interesting to me. Of course, it's Madison is just a plug and play in that scheme. He's Dalvin Cook. Like, they don't care who he is. When he had a full game earlier this season, they were dialing up complex screens for him. It was like, pump one way, come back the other. I mean, there was no limits on how Madison is using this offense. So I know I'm talking up the chalk even more, but he's typically a good chalk in that system. But talk to me about the Vikings receivers and the rest of the group today.
Yeah, you're exactly right. I love the Vikings receivers today. I think Jefferson, I mean, I'm going to love him any week. He always has upside. I mean, he has upside just like Tyreek. Like he could put up a couple touchdowns and 150 yards pretty easily. So I like him a ton. And Thielen, I mean, the guy always gets overlooked. I mean, he's one of the biggest red zone targets really for any NFL team. And, he's priced up there, at low ownership. I definitely going to have interest. So I think he's a great play. I think some of the cash game plays that are going to congregate, I mean, Davante Adams, especially with Madison coming in a little bit cheaper and there's some value plays out there. I think Adams will be very popular. I think CeeDee Lamb is going to be relatively popular. He and Cooper, especially on DraftKings, good prices over there. DJ Moore continues to get it done week in, week out. He's priced up there now, but obviously a very, very good play. A couple other guys that I have interest in too. I think Keenan Allen is a really good tournament play. He's been getting the volume. He's probably going to get a little bit overlooked. I think we have him at 12% ownership this week. So he's certainly someone to take a peek at. Jacoby Myers is getting a lot of talk. The volume is there. He hasn't scored any touchdowns at all yet this year, and it's a pretty low scoring game, but certainly someone that you could use if you need to save some money. And then some of Tom Brady's pass catchers, I think Godwin's a good play. He and Evans, I think they're under 10% ownership as well. So I think they're guys that you can take a look at. And then, for some value plays, particularly on DraftKings, I think Tony for the Giants, I think he's going to carry some ownership. He's priced pretty cheap. Laviska Shenault. And then I'll also mention Mooney. You talked about Fields a little bit. Mooney is priced up a little bit more, but he's still too cheap for what he can do out there. Both he and Allen Robinson is priced really cheap. I was surprised on DraftKings, and I think he's a fantastic tournament play. So, definitely don't forget about a couple of those Bears guys as well.
Yeah, good point. Mooney had a large chunk of not only the target market share, but air yard market share. Obviously, it's one game, but encouraging to see someone finally in Chicago able to put the ball in Mooney's hands, because it didn't happen frequently enough last year and leading up to this point. Another guy I want to mention before I pass it over to Tuttle is I have GPP interest in Jalen Waddle with Devontae Parker out. Obviously, Tampa Bay is so dinged up in the secondary that they brought in Richard Sherman, who looked terrible last week. He looked like he hasn't played in quite some time. And I'm shocked that they didn't land my God, the Patriots guy, I'm drawing a blank, just came from Pee Wee football. My mind's in a million places, but I thought they were a shoo-in to get more help in the secondary. So Tampa Bay is really dinged up and they funneled the run. And I think Jalen Waddle is going to see a large chunk of that target market share today. So he's one of my cheaper value punts you could call it today, I guess. So Tuttle, talk to me about receiver.
Yeah. Going back to the Bears receivers who we were talking about again, we mentioned we don't have a whole lot of sample with Justin Fields. Allen Robinson has obviously been terrible this season, but it's like he's played with such bad quarterback play over the last few years and has still put up numbers. And to think that that's just going to go away because Fields is quarterbacking, I think is wrong. So I think it's a great spot to buy low on Allen Robinson. And if you're looking for a bring back option, I mentioned I like Darren Waller, but Henry Ruggs is only projected for about 1% ownership. I think he has 7 targets in the last 2 or 3 games straight. So he's starting to get more involved. We've seen him used as a downfield weapon. They're trying to manufacture some touches to him as well. So I like Ruggs quite a bit as a bring back option. Not a whole lot to add from what you guys already talked about. I do think Tennessee passing attack is fairly interesting just because of the matchup. So AJ Brown, but then something else that I almost completely went unnoticed, and I'm unlikely to have any shares of this guy. But I do think Josh Reynolds is a very intriguing option for the Titans because 3,300, it went totally unnoticed by me that Nick Westbrook is inactive for today. So Reynolds will be, or should be, I guess, the second receiver in 2 receiver sets for the Titans. And again, the matchup's there for him. So he's going to get absolutely 0 ownership. And there's really nobody else that's all that attractive in that price range. So I do think he's worthy of a few dart throws for tournaments.
Do either of you have concern for Amari Cooper's injuries he's been dealing with this week, ribs and hamstring, and he's carrying, we're looking at 17% projected ownership. Didn't, what do you play? Like just under 50% of the snaps last week, I think it was. I don't know. Just something to throw out there. Tuttle, you got any read on this, or Kristi, either one of you?
Well, he left. Well, and the reason why he played so few snaps, right? It looked like he was done for the day.
Yeah.
Left, I think, after the second or third snap pretty quickly. And I had my CD Lamb shares. I'm like, all right, this will be all right for CD. It did not turn out that way. He came back at like he's supposedly all right, but I do definitely think if we think the ownership's going to come in at this 18% mark, fade away. Injuries are a part of the game. We know this guy already is dealing with multiple injuries, and the soft tissue ones are the ones that are most worrisome, right? So like ribs, you can kind of play through. It's a pain tolerance thing, but if something else happens with that hammy, it's good night.
Okay, tight ends. Let's move on to tight ends, and we'll get to some questions and some stacks after that. So Kristi, talk to me here. You interested in Hawkinson in that game environment over there?
Yeah, I definitely am. I mean, you mentioned Darren Waller. I have a ton of interest. I like that game environment a lot. So he's someone definitely probably more so even on FanDuel paying up for him. Evan Ingram, certainly his price is really good. I like his price point on DraftKings in particular. Should be a lot of targets there. One of the highest scoring game environments of the week. Think he's a great play. Also, Mike Gesicki. We talked about Parker being out. I think there's even some more targets available for him in that game. Think he's great. You mentioned Hawkinson. And then Dalton Schultz. I mean, he's just been a favorite target too of Prescott. I think he's someone to take a look at. Noah Fant always seems to go a little bit overlooked. I like him as a GPP play. And then I think, you can use Ricky Seals-Jones, especially on DraftKings. Very, very cheap over there. And then maybe even Jared Cook could be someone to throw in the conversation as well in that Chargers game.
Okay, Tuttle, thoughts here?
Yeah, I mean, it's everybody Kristi mentioned on FanDuel. I think it's pretty clearly you play Darren Waller I prefer Darren Waller by a fairly wide margin, but otherwise it's Gesicki over there at the price discount. Some really cheap guys that are not going to be owned because cheap ownership is flooding to Ingram and RSJ. Dan Arnold, kind of a weird tout, and I was surprised to see him. I saw yesterday that Erik Beimfohr actually had him tagged as a conviction play. Just traded, was a short week yet last week with his new team. But despite it being a short week, like they still drew up a couple of tight end screens for him. Like it looked like they were actually trying to get him involved in the offense. Not going to be just a guy that's on the field, but he's actually going to be involved in the offense. So I do like him at 2,900. I think he's got some hidden upside there. And then Cole Kmet, every week I'm probably going to chase after him, but 2,700, just if you think about it from a wider viewpoint, like Arnold and even Kmet, like they're not very, very different plays from Ricky Seals-Jones and Evan Ingram. And those two are just going to be absolute chalk on the slate. So I think it's a pretty smart position to try to get a little bit different at.
Okay. Kristi, give me who's your favorite optimal-ish stack and give me something off the wall.
Yeah, I would say for optimal, looking at that, kind of looking at that Dallas game there, I would say that's probably more optimal, like that game environment a lot. But probably my favorite stack, and I forgot to mention this guy for receiver, but I love Burrow. I love the Cincinnati Green Bay game. Jamar Chase, probably one of my favorite plays too. Forgot to mention him, but that's probably one of my favorite GPP stacks on the slate.
Okay, Tuttle.
Yeah, I'm with Kristi with the Cincinnati Green Bay stack. In terms of like low owned, it's definitely the Fields for me. Fields, Allen Robinson, and it's like, again, it's not all that exciting to pull the trigger on, but I think we're just dealing with such a small sample, and people are jumping off ship pretty quickly on it, and so I think it's a good buy low spot for him.
Cool, sounds good. Let's move on to some questions from the chat. Number one, I'll start over here with you, Kristi. Chubb or Swift today?
I really like Chubb. I do like Swift too, but for tournaments, I think Chubb's one of the best plays on the slate.
Okay. Tuttle, do you think Curtis Samuel could play 50% of the snaps today? Is that in the realm of things that could happen?
It's in the realm. I did see a fairly negative tweet, at least it was worded that way by a beat reporter earlier today. based on his wording or the beat reporter's wording, they pushed him a little bit more than they actually wanted to last week, and he didn't obviously play a whole lot last week. The difference here is De'Ami Brown is inactive today, so maybe he gets pushed into more snaps just because of that.
Okay, let's see here. Come on, Google Chrome, let's do it. All right, Kristi, how much Ramondre Stevenson are you playing today?
Not much.
Okay, that's fair. Flip side, do you have any interest in Damian Harris?
I do have some interest in Damian Harris, and he's certainly in the GPP pool for sure. Yep, I like him.
Okay, Tuttle, DK Cash, Gesicki, Tony, or Ingram Higgins?
Ingram Higgins.
Okay. Thoughts on Aaron Rodgers at low owned, amazing QB in great matchup, Kristi?
I like it. Yeah, we didn't talk about him. I like that game environment, and I really like both sides of it. And it seems like anytime you can get Aaron Rodgers at low ownership, he can come out there and throw a gem. So I think it's a fantastic play.
Okay, I got another Amari Cooper question. He is still questionable, dealing with injuries all week. Looks like he's in line to play. We haven't projected just under 20% on DK, and I think Tuttle mentioned it might be a good tournament fade to kind of get off Cooper for tournaments at that ownership. Let's see. Justin Fields is a tough one. Yeah, Tuttle, you got any other thoughts on Justin Fields?
Honestly, that comment is exactly why you play him, right? Mm-hmm. Again, small sample size, recency bias. Might not hit, but I think at the current ownership that he's projecting at, he's got upside to break the slate, basically.
Okay. Kristi, DK GPP, Sam Darnold stack or Trevor Lawrence stack?
Oh, I like those both. Didn't talk a lot about them. I have interest. I'd probably say Trevor Lawrence just because, kind of a good comeback. And especially if you think they're going to be using Derrick Henry and getting on the other side of it, like Shenault quite a bit. So I think I like Lawrence. Okay.
Tuttle, this one's not in the chat, but it's one thing I've been kind of trying to play out in my head all week. Well, which one of these Tampa Bay pass catchers do you have the most interest in today?
It's tough. You're throwing darts. Evans was the guy that I wrote down, mostly because he projects to be the lower owned of the trio. And then that's basically what it is for me. Take the lowest owned guy, hope he hits more or less.
Gotcha. Yeah, I saw an Antonio Brown mentioned there, so I figured I would bring it up. Kristi, Hunter Henry or Evan Ingram?
I'd probably go Ingram.
Okay. I got a FanDuel, a $6,000 or less question. Hunter Renfrow, Jacoby Myers, Henry Ruggs, or LaVisca? Tuttle, do you have any input? It's Renfrow, Jacoby Myers, Ruggs, or Shenault?
Ruggs is my favorite tournament option. I think Myers will project the best. He'll be the highest owned, is the best overall option. But I like Ruggs for tournaments.
Okay. What is Hubbard's projected ownership on DK? It looks like we have him at about 5%. You can check that out on Lineup HQ. Let's see. Blah, 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 blah. A lot of Giants chatter in the chat here. Kristi, you got a lot of Giants. What are your thoughts on figuring out, that game in general?
I do like that game stack, and I do have a couple of those in for GPPs. I think there's just a lot of ways you can attack it. Galladay, Barkley, Lamb. There's just a lot of good pieces to that whole game.
Okay. DK Cash, Tuttle. I feel like we did that one. Gesicki, Tony, or Ingram Higgins. I think we did that one. Let's see. Here's another DK Cash question, Tuttle. Curtis Samuel and DJ Moore, or Jacoby Myers and T. Higgins for cash?
I think you gotta go 2 there. Myers, Higgins.
Yeah, I'm with you. How come more people aren't on Cameron Brate? I like Cameron Brate today. Again, there's a lot of mouths to feed in that offense. What do you think, Kristi? Cameron Brate?
Sure. He's in the mix. There's just a lot of other cheaper plays that I like a little bit better this week.
Okay. Question, Tuttle, can you stack Cousins with Madison, and will that be popular? And another receiver. So I think we're talking about 3 Vikings there, maybe.
Yeah, you definitely can. It's not going to be overly popular where you have to worry about it. I don't think it will be unpopular. It's not going to be unique lineup construction, but completely fine with it.
Okay. Let's see. Kristi, thoughts on Najee Harris today?
I like him. Yeah. I mean, the volume is there. He's someone we didn't talk about. And yeah, we just know he's going to get a ton of volume each and every week. So definitely a great play.
Okay. Let's see. Got a 3v3 here title. Lance, Tony, Ricky Seals Jones. Oof. Or Jones, Daniel Jones, Samuel, and Ingram for DK Cash.
I think one will be actually fairly popular. And I'm mostly okay with it. I would side one just because of the Samuel unknowns. But yeah, like you said, it is kind of an ugly thing to look at for cash games, but I think it will be fairly popular.
Yeah, I like Trey Lance for cash this week. I think I'm just getting him in there probably at the ownership. He's probably gonna soak up there. Again, Curtis Samuel 50%. Unlikely but possible, right? Tuttle, is that we reiterating on that, right? Unlikely but possible.
Yeah.
Okay. Kristi, Ingram or Brait on DK tight end?
I would go Ingram.
Okay. DK Cash, is Waddle cash viable with Parker out? If he's the last piece in, I know I talked Waddle. I think if he's the last piece in, I think it's okay. I don't think he'll be highly owned, but I think he should see the volume. So I'm okay with the last piece in there. Jalen Hurts goes ham. What do you think about Jalen Hurts today, Tuttle?
Fine play. I don't have a whole lot of them personally. But I'm not against it.
Okay. Let's see. Any love for Max Williams at tight end, Kristi?
He's someone I didn't find in my plays this week, but yeah, I mean, he's an option. I think there's a lot of other cheap ones that you could probably do better. Get a little bit more targets though.
Okay. DK Cash, Myers and CD, or Marvin Jones and Amari, Tuttle?
Number one for sure.
Okay. Week 5 and Najee Harris has no picture on FanDuel. That's pretty funny. 12:58 Eastern, guys. Make sure you're saving whatever you're working on. Millie question here for you, Kristi. Debo or Chubb for the Millie?
Oh boy, they're both fantastic plays for the Millie. I would probably, that's a tough one. I'd probably go Chubb.
Okay. DK Cash, Higgins or LaVisca Chenault? Tuttle.
That's Higgins for me.
Okay. And it looks like we tackled all the questions in the chat. So thanks for sticking with us, guys. Wow, Devin, I'm getting you in with a minute to spare here. Well, you said you're smashing some Derrick Henry parlays today. Is that correct?
That's correct. I don't think I went for the 2+ touchdowns. I think I just went for the anytime 1 touchdown. And then I got, I think, 140 or more rushing yards. And then I can't remember who I brought it back with. It might have been Marvin Jones touchdown.
Okay. Yeah, I like
this is because you're fading Derrick Henry in DFS, though, right?
It was to cover my bases in case I wanted to, but I actually ended up getting a good bit of Henry, so I'll feel good either way.
Cool. 12:59, guys. Make sure you're locking those lineups in. I skipped your question, Adam. I'm sorry. I have a lot of questions rolling in. Waddle or Gesicki in the flex. Any input on that quick?
I'd probably go Gesicki.
Okay. Yeah, Adam, I'm looking for your question here. Let's see if I can find it quick.
DK Cash, Adams and Barkley, or Henry and Keenan.
I'm playing Henry and Cash. What do you guys think?
Yeah.
Yep. Henry and Cash.
Okay. Yeah, sorry about that, Adam. Had a lot rolling in. Jacoby Brissett, Isaiah Ford. Oh boy. Anyway, 1:00, guys. Thanks for sticking with us here. And we're probably gonna wrap up and get out of here and get to some football. So anything else before we get out of here, guys?
Go good. Justin Fields.
All right. Well, hey, good luck, everybody. Thanks for sticking with us. For producer Devin, Kristi, and Dan, I'm Justin Carlucci. Good luck, everybody.